Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. I evolve infinitely in the Marvel world. Chapter 1. It's 10 o'clock at night, and New York under the dark night is still like a city that never sleeps. The brilliance of neon lights is everywhere, and it is still bright and visible even in the night sky. A tall, handsome man wearing a black cloak was flying at low altitude 100 meters under the night sky. His speed was extremely fast, but he didn't attract anyone's attention, as if his whole person had blended into the darkness. In this New York, there is a very conspicuous building with the English name Stark Industries on it. The man took a deep look at the building. This was not the first time he had seen this very representative building. But no matter how many times he saw it, this iconic building and Tony Stark, the person in charge of this building, reminded him. This is not the world he lived in his last life, but the dangerous Marvel world full of superheroes and various supernatural powers. If he was just an ordinary person without any power, he would have to consider whether to hide far away. After all, New York in the Marvel world is not something ordinary people can stay in. And not only can ordinary people not stay here, they also have to pray that in a few years, they will not destroy themselves because of some purple sweet potato spirit snapping their fingers. Fortunately, he is not an ordinary person without the ability to protect himself in this life. He awakened the void system of the League of Legends, giving him some ability to protect himself in this dangerous world. The man flew all the way for a while and landed directly in front of a luxurious manor in Brooklyn. The man skillfully opened the door with the key and walked in. At this time, the man's cell phone vibrated quickly. The man took out his cell phone and looked at a series of newly sent text messages. The content of the text message is, "Death, after deducting 5% of the foundry fee, the remaining money has been safely transferred to your account. We look forward to our next cooperation. Dear Mr. Harvey Ambalaka, Zero Technology Company has transferred $14.25 million to your account. Your current balance is $163.24 million. Harvey Ambalaka saw this scene with a smile on his face. A series of zeros on an account will make anyone feel happy when they see it. The man's name was Chu Wei in his previous life, and he was an out-and-out native of the Celestial Dynasty. In this life, Harvey Ambalaka is an orphan. The only person who showed any kindness to him was the director of the orphanage. Although his life in the orphanage was not prosperous and smooth, it successfully allowed him to grow up. Because he awakened the system 2 years ago, he received help from the League of Legends Void system and gained the power of Kozak, the Void Predator, one of the Void races. It gave him the ability to blend into the darkness. As long as he was in a place with shadows, he could be invisible at will. He could easily cut through steel with a sharp blade. He had amazing physical fitness and almost abnormal level jumping power. Harvey also has the long lifespan of the Void clan in League of Legends. The most important thing is that he has the ability to absorb all energy-containing substances and evolve. When Harvey Ambalaka has power, it is certainly impossible for him to feel afraid of his own power or to hide his power. This is the Marvel world. As an ordinary person without power, he may die from accidental disasters caused by battles between heroes at any time in the future. Therefore, he immediately considered how to make money and improve his life. With his near-permanent invisibility, he can enter anywhere quietly as long as it's dark. He does have the ability to directly rob various wealthy people and even directly rob banks, but that is illegal. It's not that Harvey can't reveal his identity, but he doesn't want to deal with the FBI all the time. In the end, Harvey Ambalaka chose to become a mercenary. As long as he can afford the price he wants, he will take the task and execute it. Depending on the tasks, this profession can be called a killer or a bodyguard. Although this is also illegal in a sense, it will not affect his daily life. After more than 2 years of mercenary life, his life has greatly improved. He bought many manors and villas with full payment, and he can also directly use money to buy all kinds of food and things he wants, so as to allow him to evolve better. As for the orphanage, he donated $1 million to repay that kindness. It's not that you can't give more money, but it's not a kindness that needs to be repaid with your life or even your whole life. So Harvey Ambalaka felt that $1 million was enough to repay the kindness of those years. Even in the dark, Harvey could see better than during the day. Harvey walked through the long corridor and came to the living room, turned on the light, took out a bottle of wine from the wine cabinet, and sat on the luxurious sofa. He poured himself a glass of wine, then picked up the tablet placed aside and entered a black website to read. There are various tasks on it to assassinate a certain big shot, protect or even destroy a certain place. Except for Harvey not taking orders to assassinate Asians, he would consider taking any other orders, even those from the military. There are many things that the military of various countries cannot do openly. Where there are bright deeds, there will be unsightly darkness accompanying them. The military of various countries and some wealthy people need agents to deal with certain dark things, and agents are undoubtedly mercenaries like them who work for money. Harvey looked at some tasks posted on the dark web until Harvey saw a special task. The mission is to go to Afghanistan in 1 month and kill a person from the military. The minimum reward is 10 million, and the maximum can be 50 million depending on the completion of the mission. Harvey saw the location of the mission, and the person who posted the reward had full knowledge of the target's itinerary. He glanced at the year 2008 in the lower right corner of the tablet, and immediately knew who the person for whom the reward for this mission was to be captured was. Even though it was clear that the mission was to kill people under the protection of the military, there was also a high reward of up to 50 million, which proved that this order was anything but ordinary. But there are always a lot of desperados working for money in the world. It is no exaggeration to say that the reward of up to 50 million means that even if multiple people cooperate, as long as they complete this order, they can retire safely. Harvey had to do several jobs to make up for this one, but he didn't consider taking it. On the contrary, because Harvey knew that Tony Stark was about to start the Iron Man journey, he was wondering what insurance he had not purchased for the houses under his name. Harvey has been a mercenary for more than 2 years. Except for the beginning, Harvey's follow-up orders are basically big orders, and he will accept anything as long as the price is right. Naturally, it is impossible for him to only have a deposit of 160 million in addition to this manner. In fact, Harvey has been preparing since he learned that this was the Marvel world and gained powers. Purchase shares of Stark Industries, purchase various properties and configure a series of insurances. He knew that after Tony Stark became Iron Man, New York would soon become dangerous, which also meant that it was time to make money. As long as the preparations are in place, he can not only claim a large amount of money from the insurance company openly, but also steal money from Tony Stark. And the price he paid was just to move to a manor villa he owned in another city for a period of time. Thinking that there would be a lot of money soon, Harvey couldn't help but smile on his face. Iron Man stopped taking the order, and Harvey continued to browse other bounty missions. A message came through for personal contact. Mr. Death, we have a designated mission for you. Harvey looked thoughtful at this information. Although it is not common to assign tasks among mercenaries, as long as the reputation is big enough and the task completion rate remains high, there will still be designated orders occasionally. Moreover, the rewards for designated tasks are often sufficient, because they are calculated according to the rules set by the mercenaries themselves. The task he had just completed to assassinate a high-ranking Afghan official was worth 25 million. Since you have found me, you should know the price of appointing me to sell, right? So Harvey responded. At the same time, on the other side, when a bald black man wearing an eye patch saw this response, he found that the Grim Reaper did not ask about the specifics of the mission, but directly asked if he knew the price. He felt unparalleled confidence from it, which could even be called arrogance. Nick Fury had of course investigated the Grim Reaper before contacting him. In the mercenary world, no one knows who the mercenary codenamed Death is or what he looks like. There are only a few things that are known to countless people. The god of death joined the mercenary world 2 years ago under the codename Death. He always looks like a black cloak. This god of death only accepts large orders of more than 10 million, and he is ridiculously powerful. Rewards of more than 10 million are undoubtedly high-value rewards that require life and death to complete. Even if many mercenaries cooperate with other peer teams, they may not be able to ensure 100% completion, and may return in defeat. After all, sometimes, you may face an entire army of thousands of people with fully equipped firearms. Or you can enter an institution with layers of protection and steal the most confidential documents. Some tasks are difficult to complete even if some of his agents work together. But no matter what big order this god of death takes, he can complete it 100%. No matter how alert the target is, how many troops have been mobilized to set up strict defenses, and under what protection it is under. As long as this god of death takes over the mission, the target will die mysteriously in the dark night, and the information will disappear quietly, as if it has some kind of superpower. It is no exaggeration to say that the god of death appeared in the mercenary world and became a legend known to everyone in the mercenary world in just over 2 years. There is also a rumor in the mercenary community that as long as the reward you posted is picked up by the god of death, then you can drink wine leisurely and wait for your goal to be achieved. It is precisely because of this legendary deeds and rumors of superpowers that reached Nick Fury's ears. It gave Nick Fury some thoughts and wanted to meet the god of death. However, after investigation and using his methods, he could not find any more specific information about this god of death other than the known information. If he wants to contact the god of death, he must also specify a task price starting at 20 million, with no upper limit depending on the difficulty of the task. And once the other party takes over, they have to pay $10 million as a deposit. 20 million, this is US dollars, not Zimbabwean currency. However, Nick Fury also knows that mercenaries are all desperados, and it is not impossible to take advantage of others. The premise is that you must be strong enough. Faced with a mercenary whose identity is unknown, his ability is unknown, and he is very likely to have superpowers, deception and taking advantage of others are definitely not the first priority. It was only 20 million US dollars. Even if he wanted to be transferred, he would have to spend a lot of effort lobbying all parties, and he would have to write some false plans to convince the upper management before he could be transferred. However, if the Avengers plan can be promoted and the Death God can be successfully recruited, then Nick Fury feels that this price is not unacceptable. After the money was ready, Nick Fury did not contact the god of death immediately. Until tonight, news came that a senior Afghan official had died mysteriously and suddenly, and the executioner was the god of death. Nick Fury finally made a decision and contacted Death through the dark web. Of course I know, and I don't know if what I say next will offend you. However, we would like to have an interview with you before specifying the specific tasks and price range. Because the bounty mission I want to release is somewhat special. Nick Fury hesitated before typing this sentence. Then Nick Fury waited nervously. No one knows the origin of the god of death, and it has a lot to do with the fact that the god of death only appears on the dark web. As long as the money is there, the time and the place. Faced with this statement, Harvey naturally did not refuse and responded directly. Then we'll meet at this location at 3 o'clock the day after tomorrow. Any questions? Seeing Death's response, Nick Fury directly sent a map location. After Harvey saw Washington, his eyes flickered, but he still agreed to meet. Afterwards, Harvey closed the black network and would not meet until the day after tomorrow, so there was no need to worry. And since Tony Stark is about to embark on his Iron Man journey, that means it's time for him to close his net. Harvey opened the stock software, and after going through some procedures, he planned to sell his 1.1 billion worth of stocks in batches within the next month. For Stark Industries, which is still an arms giant today, a stock worth 1.1 billion US dollars is not a lot. As long as there are people selling it, people will buy it. But if he sells it all at once, Harvey won't lose much money, but this action is likely to cause some trouble in the future. Although he is active in the mercenary world as a god of death, Harvey Ambalaka usually reveals his identity to others as a young, promising and very wealthy man. And this identity is the person who helped him handle the source of the money, and helped him get it through operations. Every time I help to find out the source of the money, there is a 20% handling fee. The price is undoubtedly quite high. But it can be regarded as a waste of money to eliminate disasters, which saved him a lot of troubles. With this identity, he can move freely except when he is in a good mood and wants to go there for a walk. After selling at a high price this time, he only had to wait for Tony Stark to decide to change his career, causing the value of Stark's shares to plummet before he bought them in large quantities. Tony Stark will rely on his terrifying mind to drive up the value of Stark Industries stock again. From this he was able to make a lot of money. While Harvey was dealing with it, his stomach suddenly growled. Harvey was also used to it, and temporarily put down the work at hand and came to the garage. There were a series of beautiful cars in the garage. Harvey thought about it, changed his clothes, and chose an Audi R8. A car key appeared in his hand, and he drove away from the manor. Because of gaining the power of the Void Predator Void Mantis, Harvey not only has powerful abilities but also becomes very easy to get hungry. However, Harvey did not hate this feeling, because he knew that when he gained some power, there would be some price. Moreover, the system only turned him into a foodie, and Harvey didn't think it was worth the price. Harvey drove the Audi R8 and started heading towards his usual restaurant, Carrington. In the United States, in a less prosperous city, many stores would close early at 10 o'clock in the evening. This is one of the reasons why Harvey has estates in other cities, but chose to stay in New York temporarily. Even though it's called Hell's Kitchen and is filled with dangers, it just proves how lively it is. The League of Legends Void system he owns allows him to choose one of the 8 heroes belonging to the Void race. They are Kassadin the Void Walker, Kaisa the Void Girl, Rek'Sai, the Void Earth Escape Beast, and Kog'Maw the Abyss Maw. Malzahar, Seer of the Void, Volkoz, Eye of the Void, Kha'Zix, Reaver of the Void, Cho'Gath the Terror of the Void. The 8 hero templates all have extremely terrifying and powerful powers, but they also have priorities. Among them, the Void Burrower Rek'Sai, the Void Girl Kaisa, and the Abyss Maw Kog'Maw, although they all have the ability to evolve, they will definitely be very strong in the end, but these 3 evolutions are more difficult. Therefore, it was initially eliminated by Harvey directly. The Void Prophet Malzahar will give him the power of Prophet and Void magic. If he were to change to a world he was unfamiliar with, Harvey would definitely choose this. But this is the Marvel world, and judging from the current situation, the situation is not much different from what he learned in his previous life, so the power of the Void Prophet is not needed for the time being. Voidwalker Kassadin can give him the ability to acquire terrifying space magic, but for now, the blue star in the Marvel world alone is enough for him for the time being. When he chooses the second template later, he may choose Voidwalker, but this is not his first choice. Volkoz, the Eye of the Void, has extremely high intelligence and the ability to analyze and learn everything. He is very powerful. The only drawback is that this is a complete mage, not fleshy enough, so Harvey is put in the back. What remains is the growth. The most obvious and safest to grow is Kha'Zix, the Void Reaver, and Cho'Gath, the Void Terror. In the end, Harvey gave priority to Kha'Zix, the Void Reaver, and it turned out that he made the right choice. After he made his initial choice, it gave him the ability to escape directly into the darkness, making others completely unaware of his abilities and super sharp blade. After 237 evolutions in the past 2 years, he has mastered the ability to fly at Mach 4 speed, and his physical defense is also extremely powerful. Firearms can't break his defense at all, and his hearing may not be comparable to the super hearing of the Void Escape Beast, but as long as he concentrates. Harvey can easily hear any small sound within thousands of meters, but it is too noisy when turned on, so Harvey generally does not consider turning it on. Poison, fire, ice, thunder and other extremely lethal destructive abilities can hardly pose a fatal threat to him. Harvey knows that the current version of himself is definitely not invincible. After all, there are many heroes in the Marvel world whose abilities are almost unreasonable. At this stage, there are several powerful people from Marvel Blue Star, such as Ancient One and Captain Marvel. Especially the existence of Ancient One made Harvey dare not make too big a fuss and attract Ancient One even if he wanted to, and he would be in big trouble. But Harvey is not in a hurry, because he is only at the beginning of his evolution and is far from reaching his limit. He can become stronger. It was also because Harvey was not strong enough to ignore everything, so he did not act recklessly. As for how to open the second hero template, Harvey is still unclear. The system only said that it was the first opportunity to choose, and more selection opportunities will be opened in the future. So in the past 2 years, Harvey has relied on his own will to live freely. He has made a lot of money through mercenary missions and eaten delicious food sent from all over the world. Harvey not only evolves by eating food and accumulating a certain amount, but also absorbing some objects with abnormal energy can also allow him to evolve. Judging from the previous situation of absorbing common metals such as iron and steel to obtain evolutionary energy, Marvel's specialty vibranium metal, not surprisingly, can also absorb evolution. It is also because of absorbing the energy of common metal elements such as iron and steel that his strength has improved significantly in the past 2 years. It was just the feeling of iron and steel being absorbed that made him, now a foodie, unable to eat for a week and enduring unbearable hunger. So Harvey would never want to absorb ubiquitous substances like iron and steel unless he had to. It's just that in order to have stronger power for self-protection, it still has to be absorbed. Harvey plans to open more templates in the future and absorb a large amount of vibranium, the hardest metal, in order to quickly enhance his strength. Even he doesn't know what vibranium tastes like, so he hopes it won't make him feel uncomfortable and want to vomit. Thinking of vibranium and the taste of iron and steel made Harvey feel less hungry. Harvey shook his head to clear his mind and continued driving to the restaurant. As Harvey walked through the streets of Hell's Kitchen, he flicked and stopped steadily at a luxurious restaurant. Although Harvey is an Asian, he has a tall, muscular body and a handsome appearance, plus he is wearing a suit and the latest Audi R8 that are worth a lot of money. Still, it immediately attracted the attention of some young and beautiful beauties. Harvey has long been accustomed to this. Even if he occasionally gets interested, he will choose a beautiful woman who suits his taste to fall asleep with him. However, his eyes are not so strong that when he sees a woman, he would want to sleep with her. At this time, a young blonde woman, with a touching smile on her face, took the initiative to step forward. "Mr. Harvey, you are still so handsome and charming." "Miss Diana, you know I have no interest in this kind of thing." Harvey responded with a smile when he saw the beautiful woman with blonde hair and blue eyes in front of him who was wrapped in a suit and uniform, but her figure was even more impressive. "Of course I know, I just don't know which lucky person can win your heart. Come in with me. I've already informed the chefs. When they knew you were coming, they took action immediately." Diana smiled slightly when she heard this, glanced at Harvey with a slightly provocative look, then bent slightly to salute and said politely, "It's hard to say how to capture someone's heart, but it's not impossible to be attracted by someone for a moment. I just wonder, Miss Diana, if you would like to be the lucky one and share tomorrow's breakfast with me." Harvey saw this proud white snow, and naturally he would not show weakness when faced with these slightly provocative words, and responded directly. Diana's heart moved when she heard this, and she looked up into Harvey's eyes with some expectation. Harvey Ambalaka moved to New York just over a year ago. He is a young, handsome and wealthy businessman, and his personality is approachable and polite. Although Harvey Ambalaka is certainly not as famous as New York's famous playboy Tony Stark, he is still a man who attracts many beauties. If Harvey Ambalaka really had that wish, she would really like to share the early morning breakfast with him. Because once you have a one-night stand, based on the rumors about Harvey Ambalaka in the past, even if you cut off contact immediately, you can directly get a sum of money that is worth more than her decades of work. But when Diana noticed that Harvey's eyes were still extremely clear, she knew it was just Harvey's joke. Mr. Harvey is as good at joking as ever. So Diana suppressed the disappointment in her heart, responded with a smile as if nothing had happened, and continued to lead the way for Harvey. Harvey nodded slightly when he heard this, and walked in without saying anything more. After quickly filling his stomach with a lot of delicious food, it was already 12 o'clock in the evening, and Harvey drove back home. After Harvey returned home, he went directly to the secret training base beneath the manor, which has intricate terrain. And there are some targets that are moving at high speed. With Harvey's current power, few in the Marvel world can compete with him at this stage. The ability to compete with himself is too buggy, so Harvey can only adapt to the increased strength brought about by his evolution through daily self-training. Your evolution points have reached 1 million points, please choose the direction of evolution. Passive Intangible Threat Evolution Level 27. When there is only one person within 10 meters of the target you are fighting, you will be in an isolated and helpless state. Facing enemies in this state, your cutting and penetrating abilities will be greatly improved. Taste the Fear Evolution Level 32, instantly delivering 16 silent stabs. If the enemy is in an isolated and helpless state, the power will be greatly increased. The evolution level of Void Thrust is 40. It instantly releases explosive thrusts containing toxins around itself. The creature that hits will return its own life energy, which can accelerate the healing of all its own injuries. The current angle is 360 degrees, covering 1,000 rice. If the target is in an isolated and helpless state, the power will be increased and the effect of absorbing life energy will be increased. Leap Attack Evolution Level 35. jump and land with an instant burst of terrifying power. The jump is greatly improved, the power when landing is greatly increased, and the flying speed is greatly increased. Void attack level 50. Escape into the darkness of the void. Your own speed will be greatly increased, and you can ignore all matter and shuttle through the dark void. In the darkness, no living thing will be able to detect you. The above skills will be further strengthened when you return to your hero prototype. Change is good. Kha'Zix, Void Reaver. Void skin has evolved to level 25, mental resistance has evolved to level 15, and hearing has evolved to level 13. Harvey added it to Void skin without hesitation. Although if he has the ability of Void Fear Korgas, his physical defense will truly evolve to a point where it is nearly indestructible. But now Harvey has no choice but to improve this Void skin to increase his resistance to various attacks. His attack power is enough to easily kill countless people, but his physical body is not strong enough to ignore everything. Although he can also absorb other people's life energy to recover from injuries, there is no need to be too afraid of getting hurt. But when he needs to use recovery methods, it means that he encounters an enemy who can hurt him. He may need to consider retreating, although retreating is not difficult for him, and Harvey is not a fool. With his ability to evolve, it can be said that there is no need to worry about having no firewood. If I can't beat you now, I can beat you if I evolve dozens, hundreds or even 1,000 times. However, it is definitely best to be able to defeat the target directly without retreating. Therefore, improving the physical defense strength is to reduce the need to retreat. After Harvey chose to evolve, a 5-meter-tall terrifying mantis shadow with a purple shell appeared behind Harvey. The purple mysterious and evil light covered the whole body of the shadow of the mantis, and Harvey's body was the same. Harvey turned around and looked at this figure, feeling happy but also a little complicated in his heart. Harvey knew that only after fully activating Kha'Zix, the Void Mantis, would his strength be maximized and his true strength revealed. So Harvey had activated it once before, and the feeling of being completely integrated into the void and controlling the darkness was fascinating. But when it is activated, the Void Predator Kha'Zix's murderous intent and dark thoughts from the void will continue to ring in his mind. Harvey was worried that after being activated for a long time, his current strength would be unable to withstand the subtle influence of the void, and he would lose his mind and turn into a monster that only knew how to kill, devour, and evolve. That's why Harvey decided to absorb a large amount of unpalatable iron and steel to allow himself to evolve rapidly. Let yourself be powerful enough without using the Void Predator Kha'Zix's shadow. You have evolved 238 times, and Void Skin has successfully evolved to level 26. The evolution points required for the next evolution are still only 1 million. Harvey put on a training suit and started training. He started flying, jumping and attacking in the training base with a total of more than 3,000 square meters on 3 underground floors. He is now too powerful and has perfect control over his power. If he makes a mistake, he can easily cause a big mess and cause a series of troubles. Therefore, Harvey has never neglected to practice, and he only rests for 2 days at most every week to relax and unwind. This is also Harvey's daily routine after gaining strength. On the other side, Nick Fury saw that the god of death had agreed to meet him, and rubbed his brows, slightly calming down the excitement and nervousness in his heart. "Sir, how many of us are going to go the day after tomorrow?" According to speculation, there is a high probability that he is a male, right? Do you need to call Agent Natasha with you? Phil Coulson was always there, asking about the situation. Not many people knew about the intention to contact the mercenary codenamed Death, but Agent Natasha was one of them. If this god of death is indeed in line with their speculation and belongs to a person with superpowers, Chief Fury hopes to recruit him into the Avengers. However, the meeting fee alone costs $20 million. It has to be said that this is an extremely outrageous price, so it can be said that it is bound to be completed. You can just go with me. Agent Natasha is still investigating Harvey Ambalaka, so there is no need to call her first. Nick Fury tapped his fingers on the table, considered the instructions before giving them. Harvey Ambalaka is also a person they pay attention to because they have investigated Harvey Ambalaka, a young rich man who suddenly appeared in the past 2 years. In the past, Harvey Ambalaka's parents died, and he was an Asian from an orphanage. Asians will have some benefits in the United States, but they will more or less be subject to some discrimination and cold treatment. Judging from previous experiences, Harvey Ambalaka can be said to be a poor man, and there is nothing wrong with him. But when Harvey Ambalaka was 19 years old, he suddenly won a lottery worth tens of millions of dollars, after paying taxes of $5.7 million. With 4.3 million United States dollars, Harvey Ambalaka chose to invest in Zero Technology and became one of its shareholders. Subsequently, many people continued to invest in Zero Technology and continued to pay dividends to Harvey Ambalaka. With the money from dividends, Harvey Ambalaka began to enter real estate and the stock market. As if he had the ability to predict the future, he never failed, and whatever he bought would go up. In less than 3 years, Harvey Ambalaka, who is only 21 years old, has become a famous young rich man in New York. His net worth has increased hundreds of times, and his current net worth is as high as over $4 billion. Manors, luxury cars, and luxury watches are all available, which is why even though Harvey Ambalaka is an Asian, he is still favored by countless young and beautiful women in New York. Since Harvey Ambalaka has not committed any crime, the top management will not conduct in-depth investigation into Harvey Ambalaka, who has paid taxes. Normally Harvey Ambalaka is a lucky man, but suddenly he got so lucky that he only bought lottery tickets 5 times and won a jackpot worth tens of millions of dollars and reached the top of his life. The speed of taking off is too fast. If you don't know that there are aliens besides Blue Star, and Blue Star may also hide other superpowers. When Nick Fury sees Harvey Ambalaka's resume, he will simply think that he is a lucky man. But Harvey Ambalaka's miraculous turnaround was followed by his vicious vision that was like a prophet, and he knew everything about investment and the stock market. Moreover, Harvey Ambalaka's appetite is different from ordinary people, and the daily consumption alone is not something that ordinary people can afford. But usually, when Harvey Ambalaka appears outside, he is a young rich man who spends money like water and has an unusually good appetite. So Nick Fury just decided to send Natasha to investigate. It is definitely not possible to take action, because for such a high taxpayer, Harvey Ambalaka has not committed any crime. Their Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency does not have the right to arrest or detain directly without the FBI. But if Natasha comes into contact with Harvey Ambalaka, she can discover that Harvey Ambalaka really has some unique superpowers. They really hope to win over Harvey Ambalaka. After all, the crisis that will endanger Blue Star will come soon. But I heard that Agent Natasha's work is not going well. It feels like a waste of time. She's in a bad mood now. Phil Coulson heard that he knew what Agent Natasha was going to do and said. Normally, with Agent Natasha's beauty, it would not be difficult to lurk around some successful men. Harvey Ambalaka also has a villa and estate under his name, so it stands to reason that he would hire a housekeeper or secretary to take care of it. But Harvey Ambalaka didn't do that. He had no plans to recruit a housekeeper or a secretary. Harvey Ambalaka usually stays in the private manor, not knowing what to do. Fortunately, Harvey Ambalaka usually eats delicious food in various restaurants and hotels. However, this is also uncertain, because Harvey Ambalaka is basically not picky about food. He may go to various restaurants, he may eat at the same restaurant consecutively, or he may suddenly go to Chinatown to eat at a stall. After eating, Harvey Ambalaka would go straight home, only occasionally taking very beautiful women with him to spend the evening with him. So much so that Agent Natasha has been lurking in various restaurants for half a month and has not been able to meet Harvey Ambalaka. Although Agent Natasha can use her beauty to seduce men to achieve some tasks, there is no such thing as temptation if they can't meet her face to face. Then please Coulson, forget it, I'll send the message to her personally. Nick Fury heard that Natasha was in a bad mood and had a headache because of her busy work in vain. After thinking about it, he agreed with Coulson. And if Natasha is here, she can provide them with more protection if they can't reach an agreement. Then Nick Fury sent an instruction to Natasha, allowing Natasha to temporarily stop the work at hand, take a day off, and meet with them in a building on the outskirts of Washington the day after tomorrow. The other side, Natasha, who had just finished a boring day's work as a waitress and returned to her temporarily rented house, saw the news and her irritable mood improved slightly. In the past half-month, she had been going around applying for waitresses in various restaurants, just to wait for Harvey Ambalaka's arrival. But Harvey Ambalaka was not hit even once. Natasha wanted to change her policy. After receiving Harvey Ambalaka's target location, she sneaked in and struck up a conversation. It's just that such an action is quick, but it also has a drawback, that is, it is very easy to arouse suspicion. Why didn't Harvey Ambalaka hold a large cocktail party and invite friends and beauties from all walks of life? Or attend soirees and parties hosted by someone of some notoriety? Then she would have many ways to sneak in and formally meet Harvey Ambalaka. However, it is common for target people not to act according to their own ideas, so Natasha adjusted her mood and went to sleep comfortably. As for why Nick Fury asked her to meet up, she didn't think too much about it. It would become clear when the time comes. 2 days passed quickly. At about 1 o'clock that afternoon, Harvey put on a cloak and covered himself directly, releasing an eerie and cold aura from his body. He left his home invisibly and headed to the rendezvous point mentioned by the person who posted the reward. In his usual identity, Harvey would drive or fly there, but when he uses his identity as the god of death, there is no need to hide it. Soon, in less than an hour, Harvey had arrived at the location mentioned by the other party. Harvey looked around and listened, and found that except for the 3 breaths of life, there was no other breath in the building. There were some people wandering around in the distance, staring in this direction vaguely. Harvey saw that they were wearing suits and ties, like office workers who could be seen everywhere, but their life energy exceeded that of ordinary people, and their physical fitness was at least above that of ordinary people. Harvey cannot directly see through a person's identity, but he can determine whether a person is strong through life energy. Absorbing these people can allow him to get a lot of evolution points, but Harvey will not kill people for no reason, and he will tell others after accepting the mission. Based on the clothes of these people, there are 3 possible identities of these people: plainclothes FBI, mercenary, or agent. As for his identity, Harvey didn't think about it further. Anyway, he would know who the person he wanted to meet was. He is not a kind-hearted mutant, thinking that he can't do this or that. If someone exudes obvious hostility towards him, or even attacks him, he will kill them outright. Then, Harvey landed directly from the air and went down to the 6th floor. When he looked at the beautiful red-haired woman in the window and the other 2 people in the room on the floor, he had already recognized the other person, so Harvey's body went directly through the window and entered the floor. Nick Fury, Coulson, and Natasha are all waiting for the arrival of the mercenary named Death. Harvey appeared directly in the triangle area surrounded by Natasha, Nick Fury, and Coulson. "What exactly do you want me to do?" The sound suddenly appeared, causing Nick Fury, Coulson, and Natasha to turn around. Among them, Natasha almost instinctively took out her gun and pointed it in the direction of the sound. This tall figure wearing a dark cloak appeared, and the cold aura emanating from it seemed to freeze the temperature of the entire room. When Natasha saw this figure wearing a black cloak and exuding a cold aura, she couldn't help but shed a drop of cold sweat on her forehead. Nick Fury turned around, his one-eyed eyes shrinking. Coulson also immediately took out his gun, and his eyelids jumped when he saw the figure. However, the quality of the agent still made Coulson tense up and not look shocked, but the saliva he couldn't help but swallow indicated that he was not at peace in his heart. Nick Fury saw this figure and the aura it exuded, and felt that this guy in a black cloak would perfectly fit the description of the god of death if he was holding a scythe. Nick Fury knows that he has really found the right person. This is definitely a strong man with superpowers. "I think you must be Mr. Death. I'm Nick Fury, the person who contacted you on the dark web before. Do you mind if we sit down and chat?" So Nick Fury immediately adjusted and said politely. When Harvey heard this, he moved and sat directly on the sofa. In the eyes of Nick Fury, Natasha, and Coulson, the black figure seemed to have moved instantaneously. "This is the first time we have met, and you are acting out of instinct, so I won't care about it this time. But in the future, if you not only point a gun at me, but also want to shoot me, I will regard this as your hostility towards me and I will treat you as an enemy." Harvey's voice was cold and he said with a hint of warning. Natasha and Coulson broke into a cold sweat when they heard these warning words. When Nick Fury heard these unkind words, almost at the same time, all 3 of them labeled the man named Death as extremely dangerous. Nick Fury has been an agent for many years and has dealt with Captain Marvel. He knows how powerful and dangerous people with superpowers can be. So Nick Fury reacted immediately, with a friendly smile on his face, his hands slightly raised and spread out, and he slowly walked to the sofa opposite Harvey. "We have no intention of becoming your enemy, and we have no intention of shooting, so please calm down. Let's have a friendly chat about our affairs." Nick Fury didn't take back his slightly raised hands until he sat down. "No matter what you want to discuss, since you have appointed me, the deposit of at least 10 million must be paid to me. I think you have already prepared the money, and you won't let me leave empty-handed, right?" Harvey didn't pay attention to Nick Fury's actions, but said directly, "Certainly." Nick Fury nodded after hearing this, also because he understood the rules of this god of death. That's why he made contact only after he had prepared the money, lest the negotiation collapse and he would die directly. After receiving the command from his commander, Coulson immediately put down his gun and opened several large boxes placed aside, which were filled with stacks of banknotes. When Harvey saw the money, he knew that Nick Fury was fully prepared before meeting him. Although he probably guessed Nick Fury's desire to meet him. "Okay, let's talk now. Assassinate, eliminate opponents who are troublesome to you, steal important documents, escort someone, etc. I wonder what task you want to assign me." However, Harvey still didn't reveal it. He just regarded Nick Fury as an ordinary bounty poster and started questioning. "Mr. Death, let me introduce myself first. I'm Nick Fury, Director of the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. I'm meeting you this time because I want to talk to you about some things that ordinary people can't understand." When Nick Fury heard these words, he really introduced himself. As for Natasha and Coulson, it's not appropriate to introduce them too much before the Grim Reaper agrees to join them. Compared to the FBI, which is easy to remember and pronounce, the name of your department is really long and difficult to pronounce. Harvey thought for a moment after hearing this, and then said. As soon as Harvey said these words, the faces of the three super agents present inevitably showed a hint of embarrassment. Nick Fury pretended to cough, trying to relieve the embarrassment, and then spoke seriously. "Ahem, this name is a bit too long. We are also considering how to modify or abbreviate this name. But the name doesn't matter. What matters is what I want to tell you next. Mr. Death, although I don't know your specific abilities, I think you should be a superpower, and you are fully confident in your own strength. It's just that even if you are as powerful as you, I dare say that the world you come into contact with is only a small part of the world." Nick Fury started his own rhetoric, trying to convince Harvey to join the Avengers. Harvey can't say that he fully understands Marvel, but he also understands most of the things in it. Of course, it is impossible not to know these things. Are you trying to say that your so-called Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau knows more than me? But Harvey still said calmly, "Yes, first of all, you need to be mentally prepared for these things, and the situation needs to be big, in order to be able to accept what I said. There are unknown aliens in the universe that we have not yet begun to truly explore. They have been to Earth once before, and that time fortunately there was a superhero named Captain Marvel who helped us resist and successfully repel those aliens. That's why we humans were spared. If we failed to repel it, the fate of humanity would be unimaginable." Nick Fury nodded upon hearing this and began to speak passionately. "It sounds like there's no need to be mentally prepared. Since there is a person with superpowers like me, it's not surprising that there are aliens, right? And even if they are aliens, they can't hurt me," Harvey said unmoved upon hearing this. This is not just because Harvey knows the Marvel world. Even in other worlds, once there are people with superpowers far beyond ordinary people, or strong people, then it is just a normal thing to have powerful races other than humans, that is, aliens. For example, in the League of Legends universe, there is not only one race, humans. According to human cognition, other races can also be regarded as intelligent aliens. Nick Fury paused when he heard Harvey's words, looking like you are not playing by the rules. Ordinary people would have heard that there was an alien invasion in the past, and with the help of heroes, mankind successfully resisted the alien attack and saved the fate of mankind. Even if you don't feel awe, you will still be surprised, right? After all, without that hero, humanity might have perished. Why didn't this Grim Reaper look surprised at all? Immediately, Nick Fury thought of something, looked at the faceless figure of Death, and asked cautiously. Forgive me for asking, Mr. Death, where are you from, what race are you human or alien? As soon as this question came up, Harvey stopped asking it, which made Harvey fall into thinking. And here's why Harvey came to a standstill. If we go by the circumstances of his previous life and time traveling into this body, he is undoubtedly a human being. But with the help of the Void system, he has the ability of the Void clan to evolve infinitely, and has a long lifespan that he doesn't even know how long. Moreover, he can also completely transform into the Void Raider Kha'Zix, taking on a terrifying and frightening appearance in the eyes of others, and his strength will also be stronger. And he will get more power from the Void clan in the future, so is he now a human or a Void clan? Harvey had never really thought about it, and now he was seriously thinking about it. Nick Fury, Natasha, and Coulson couldn't help but feel nervous when they saw that the God of Death suddenly stopped talking and seemed to be lost in thought. Natasha and Coulson heard that Nick Fury said about Captain Marvel that the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency did possess some alien materials and technology. Therefore, the two of them still believe in the existence of aliens in the universe. Just believing is one thing. The two of them have never actually seen aliens, and this God of Death who is suspected to be an alien is still a very dangerous guy. As long as fellow humans don't exude hostility, they won't worry that this God of Death will suddenly kill them. But if this God of Death is an alien, he doesn't have the sense of belonging of Blue Star or the sense of belonging of human beings. If you let them reveal your identity at this time, you may not necessarily start a confrontation with them at any time. Considering the nature of his strength and longevity, Harvey is undoubtedly more inclined towards the Void race than humans. Perhaps because he was a human in his previous life and at the beginning of this life, he has some sense of belonging to humans and may sometimes favor humans. But this sense of belonging, although it will not disappear as time goes by, will undoubtedly become weaker and weaker with the passage of time and my long life. When Harvey thought of this, he had already made a decision in his heart. I come from the Void. Under the wary looks of Natasha, Nick Fury, and Coulson, Harvey spoke. Nick Fury, Natasha, and Coulson's eyes shrank. Natasha and Coulson's bodies almost instinctively wanted to move, but remembering the warning just now, they stopped touching the gun. And it was at the same time that Harvey said these words. It is detected that the host has not deceived itself and evaded itself, and has affirmed its own will and existence. The system officially recognizes the host and will open various functions. Harvey's eyes flashed when he heard the cold voice in his head. He has been awakening the system for more than 2 years and has never known how other hero templates will be opened in the future, so he has been waiting patiently. Now he knows that the problem lies with him. Although he did not reject the Void in the past, he did not completely accept the Void either. At least until Nick Fury asked himself what race he belonged to and formally thought about it, he had never considered himself a Void race, so the system did not officially recognize it as its master. Quote. Nick Fury originally confirmed that the God of Death was a person with superpowers, but he thought he had transferred to Big Fish and wanted to win the God of Death to join the Avengers. As long as we are both human beings, we need to make each other realize that Blue Star is currently in a lonely boat in the universe and may be overturned by huge waves at any time. Then it was possible for the other party to agree to his invitation and join the Avengers to contribute to mankind, but he never thought that the other party was not a human being, but an alien. This made it difficult for Nick Fury to say many of the words he had prepared. Blue Star is mankind's only home at present. If it is destroyed, it will really be gone. But for aliens, Blue Star is just a temporary place to stay. Even if it is destroyed, they will probably have to go back to their hometown at most. However, given that this God of Death has been in Blue Star for more than 2 years, and is only doing mercenary work, it did not cause too many devastating disasters to Blue Star, which proves that the other party has not thought about destroying Blue Star. So this friend from the Void, what is the purpose of your coming to Blue Star? But Nick Fury asked anyway in order to know how to communicate with the God of Death. At the same time, Nick Fury also warned Natasha and Coulson with his eyes, asking them to suppress their thoughts. Although humans have mushroom eggs, even if there are aliens, it should be possible to kill them. But the price to pay is too high, so the first priority is to judge whether it is an enemy or a friend. See this beautiful planet, come here to travel and experience life. When Harvey faced this question, he lied as naturally as breathing. Nick Fury, Natasha, and Coulson all felt that this reason was ridiculous, but the other party was unwilling to express their true intention, and they could not force the other party to do so. Because of the strength shown by the death god just now, their chances of winning if they take action are not high, maybe even zero. Therefore, they must not take action against the other party. At least with their current situation, they are not enough to force this god of death to say what they want to hear. My friend, since you have no intention of hiding your identity, it means that we should have the possibility of communicating, right? There was a forced smile on Nick Fury's face that everyone could see. Aren't we just communicating now? Harvey saw Nick Fury's probing and warning about him in his eyes and words, but he didn't care and replied casually. Look at how stupid I am. When Nick Fury heard this, he knew that this was a relatively friendly signal, so he touched his round and glorious head and said, pretending to be stupid. I received your deposit, tell me what you want me to do for you. Harvey did not deliberately get involved in this matter, but acted as if it was business. Although Nick Fury has things he asked the god of death to do, intelligence is more important than those things that can be solved by sending agents. So Nick Fury also spoke. Originally, I had something to ask you, but now I know that you are from the void and are an alien. Can I buy some information from you? Although I am paid to do things, it also depends on what information you want to know. Harvey knew what Nick Fury, an old fox, thought, but he didn't refuse. The information I asked for will definitely not test you. I just want to ask, how many aliens are there in the universe that are relatively close to Blue Star, and what is their technological level? Or do they have some special abilities? And is Blue Star currently exposed to the eyes of other aliens? Nick Fury heard this and also expressed his problem. There are many intelligent beings in the universe, and their technological level far exceeds that of Blue Star. Space jumps, space battleships, interstellar energy cannons, etc. are all available. But those are too far away from Blue Star. You know too much about them now, which only adds to your troubles. It's hard to say about abilities. There are so many races and they have different abilities. Even putting aside those innate abilities, there is no doubt that the average physical fitness of aliens far exceeds that of humans. In terms of distance, including Blue Star, the other surrounding worlds are collectively called the Nine Realms. Asgard, the fairy palace among the Nine Realms, where the Asa clan lives, is what you humans call God, the god King Odin. Blue Star has always been exposed to the eyes of aliens, and many aliens have visited Blue Star in the past. Like the Kree, Skrulls. It's just that Odin is still alive, so other races don't dare to act too openly. Naturally, Harvey will not deliberately leak the future to prevent the trajectory of the Marvel world from changing too much and making all the information he originally knew become elusive. However, Harvey can still explain some answers that do not affect the general trend. As long as there is no big deviation, Thor will definitely be demoted to Blue Star in a few years. By then, the existence of the Asa clan will also appear in the eyes of many people on Blue Star. When Nick Fury heard Harvey mention the Kree and the Skrulls, he knew that the Death God in front of him knew much more than he expected, and he also made the Death God's words more destructive. Reliability. You mean, our human myths and legends are true. We humans have always been protected by that Asa clan. But at the same time, this also caused some questions in Nick Fury's heart. While legends vary, many are undoubtedly true. If there is a chance in the future, you may be able to meet the Asa Protoss. Harvey nodded slightly when he heard this, confirming what he said. I have a question, Mr. Death. You said Odin is still alive, so aliens don't dare to mess around. So that means that in the future, Odin in our human mythology may die, right? When Natasha heard this, she couldn't help but speak. Harvey glanced at Natasha after hearing this and did not answer. However, Harvey's silence at this time was like a sure signal, making Coulson, Natasha, and Nick Fury feel tense. This god of death specifically mentioned that God King Odin is not dead yet, so aliens do not dare to mess around. This means that once God King Odin dies, humanity will also face the arrival of other aliens in the universe. And this god of death did not answer the question of whether Odin will die, which also indicates that even the god King Odin has a lifespan. Nick Fury did not blame Natasha for asking questions without permission. He had already learned the information he wanted and was more determined to form the Avengers. It's just that Nick Fury knows that it is impossible to directly win over this god of death. Thank you for the information, Mr. Death. I wonder if there will be any chance for us to cooperate in the future. So Nick Fury showed a kind smile on his face and asked in a friendly manner. Depending on the mission, as long as you can afford the reward, I won't agree to your cooperation. Harvey did not reject it completely, but gave an ambiguous answer. Although he would be a fool not to make money when he has it, but if he has some money, Harvey still won't make it. When Nick Fury heard these words, he knew that he could invite the god of death without paying the minimum price. Whether the other party was willing to take action or not depended entirely on the other party's wishes. It can be said that humans are completely passive, a feeling that Nick Fury dislikes very much. Thank you very much. Although it was our first meeting, we had a very pleasant chat. I hope we can have opportunities to cooperate in the future. However, they currently do not have the ability to reverse the situation, so Nick Fury also said with a smile. Hope so. When Harvey heard this, he also knew that Nick Fury was just giving up and wanted to leave a good impression on him, so he also replied in a friendly manner. Then, Harvey disappeared, along with the boxes of US dollars. Natasha and Coulson looked a little wary when they saw the god of death disappearing as if teleporting. Sir, he is too mysterious. There is no guarantee that what he says is true. Maybe he might be a human. After all, we can't tell his true identity. Then, Coulson looked at Nick Fury and asked for his opinion. Nick Fury's thoughts were constantly swirling in his mind. After hearing these words, he took a deep breath, the smile on his face disappeared and turned serious, and he said something else. Coulson, what you said makes sense. It is difficult for us to ensure his identity. But the other party knows about the Kree and Skrulls. You must know that they are the aliens I encountered decades ago when I was young. Except within our bureau, the news never spread, but the other party mentioned it. And according to the way this god of death comes and goes without a trace, it is too easy to obtain a large amount of money. But the other party chose to be a mercenary to get money. This just proves that the legendary Odin may be real. Because of Odin's existence, this god of death doesn't dare to mess around too much on Blue Star. They had no way of knowing the true face of the god of death, so even if the god of death killed them, the higher-ups would not be able to investigate. What the country and the law can restrict are human superpowers or heroes, because as long as superpowers and heroes are human beings, they have things to worry about in Blue Star. But for these aliens, their human laws have little effect. The root cause of this problem is that the weapons currently in the hands of humans are too weak and they do not have the capital to negotiate terms with aliens. Therefore, the formation of the Avengers is inevitable, and it can even be said to be somewhat imminent, because it is unknown when Odin will die. Natasha, I don't care what means you use. Hurry up and get in touch with Harvey Ambalaka and test it out to see if he is a superpower. Nick Fury gave the order directly. Natasha also knew the importance of the matter, nodded and left. Coulson, go and collect more people with slightly weird deeds. I'm going to take care of some trouble. Nick Fury looked at his confidants, gave instructions and left. This information learned from the mouth of death can be said to be priceless to Nick Fury. However, obviously you cannot tell all these things to the higher-ups, so you have to do a good job of deceiving them. Harvey took the money and flew all the way back to the luxurious manor in New York. He put the money in the basement, changed his clothes, and called out of the system. Immediately, Harvey saw that the system, which only had hero templates, now had two new functions that he had never seen before. One is the sublimation of the hero, and the other is the origin of the hero. Harvey clicked into the source of heroes and found that there was only the shadow of Kazakh, the Void Reaver. In addition, there are some completely different appearances of Kazakhs, the Void Reaver. The Guardian of Sand Void Raider will gain the ability to turn into sand after being obtained, allowing it to be more concealed when it returns to its true form. The exchange conditions are unknown. Deathbloom Void Reaver will evolve the ability to mimic plants after being obtained, allowing you to transform back into your true form as beautiful and harmless as a plant. The redemption conditions are unknown. After the Tyrant Alien Void Predator is obtained, it will evolve special mechanized abilities and be able to directly transfer consciousness into various devices and manipulate them. The exchange conditions require 100 million void energy. The Odyssey Void Raider will evolve into arcane abilities after being obtained, allowing you to explore the mysteries of all things. The redemption conditions are unknown. The Death Star Void Raider will evolve into the power of the Dark Star after being obtained. Control this power and become the master of the universe. The exchange conditions are unknown. Harvey knew that although in the League of Legends game, these were just a type of skin, this seemed to have changed in the system. The only one that can be exchanged requires 100 million energy, which seems extremely amazing. However, given that the conditions and difficulty of obtaining it are not yet clear, Harvey did not directly judge that it was impossible to redeem it. Immediately, Harvey took a look at the function of sublimation and found that the condition required the source of evolution, which could be exchanged for a chance to sublimate the hero. The conditions for obtaining this source of evolution are also clearly noted above. You can get a source of evolution every 1,000 times you evolve. At present, Harvey has only evolved more than 200 times, which is still far from the hero's sublimation and evolution of 1,000 times, so Harvey doesn't care about it for the time being. The host has successfully recognized the master, and the summoning mission from the void has been released. No matter the method, find a way to spread the will of the void, let more creatures know the void, and join the void. The stronger the destiny and strength of the creature, the more void energy will be provided to the host by believing in the void. The system saw that Harvey wanted to unlock the subsequent hero templates and began to explain. What are the criteria for judging destiny? Harvey asked thoughtfully after listening to the system's words. However, the system did not answer Harvey's question, as if it had gone silent. If the system could communicate, he wouldn't have officially recognized the system as its master today. This was not the first time, so even though Harvey was a little helpless, he could only think secretly. However, these two are not difficult to understand, and Harvey just asked casually. It is very easy to understand that it is powerful. Harvey can also see some clues just by looking at the life energy of a creature. If the destiny is strong, it is most likely to refer to the more famous heroes in the Marvel Universe. If only strength is used as a criterion for judgment, Tony Stark's body is definitely not a powerful one. Maybe that's why the criterion of fate is added. Harvey had not planned to have too much involvement with Tony Stark, because this may lead to earth-shaking changes in the various futures he originally knew. But now Harvey feels that he needs to have a chat with Tony Stark after he becomes Iron Man. Speaking of fate, Tony Stark can be said to be very powerful in the Marvel world, affecting the fate of many things. If his guess is true, then letting Tony Stark believe in the void and joining the void should bring him a lot of void energy. But in order to spread the will of the void, Harvey felt it was necessary to change his actions. He needs to step out of the house to face the outside world and spread the will of the void, and in terms of method, he needs to have an identity that convinces countless people. Founding a school and becoming a principal is one way to spread empty will to ordinary people. But if it is founded now, there are some disadvantages. If the will of the void spreads, it may be treated as a cult by the FBI in the United States. But to be honest, being treated as a cult by the FBI is not a problem. Harvey is not worried about the threat the FBI will pose to him. What Harvey is worried about is that he will be targeted by Ancient One or even Odin. Although the time has not yet come for the Marvel world, so that countless people still don't understand it, the gods in the mouths of various humans in Asgard are now watching the situation in all walks of life. If the fuss is too big, the gods of Asgard may be summoned in advance, and even Odin may come down to find him personally. In addition, he still doesn't know whether others will get some strange power after believing in the void. If so, let alone others relying on the power of the void to do whatever they want, more importantly, it means that this belongs to the level of magic. This makes him very likely to be targeted by the Supreme Mage Ancient One, who controls the magic level. With his current strength, facing Odin and Ancient One, Harvey can confidently rely on integrating into the void to protect himself and retreat, but he is not sure of winning. Once things break down, Ancient One and Odin will cause him a lot of trouble, and it will be difficult to spread the will of the void, and he will have to hide everywhere. Only when he evolves enough to compete head-on with Ancient One or Odin can he move freely. So Harvey simply shelved the idea of setting up a school to recruit students on a large scale and then spread the will of the void to those students. And the system also said that attracting creatures with strong strength or powerful destiny can get more void energy. After thinking about it so far, Harvey has some goals, and it's just the beginning. It would be fine if he did some covert actions to win over some people. As for the matter of starting to spread on a large scale and earning void energy crazily, it should be easier for him to go to the universe and establish a void god cult casually. And if he wants to go to the universe, the best time will be when he has the hero template of Void Walker Cassidon and can freely travel between Blue Star and other planets in the universe. Harvey is honestly in no hurry at all, he has a long life ahead of him. If he is cautious, it is not impossible to start formal actions after killing Odin and Ancient One. Anyway, Odin and Ancient One don't have many years left to live. Of course, the best thing is to be able to pull Ancient One and Odin into the void of faith, but after thinking about it, Harvey knew that it would not be that difficult to do it. The Ancient One is waiting for the disciple who will inherit her mantle. Doctor Strange will grow up, and then he will die to make his determination clear, allowing Doctor Strange to strengthen his direction and take over the position of the Supreme Sorcerer. Odin is a god king who has conquered the universe for many years and defeated countless powerful enemies. The pride in Odin's heart is definitely not comparable to that of ordinary people. It's a good thing that the other party didn't let him believe in Asgard. If Odin and Ancient One hadn't died so quickly, they would have allowed him to evolve 1,000 or even thousands of times. Harvey was confident that Odin and Ancient One would surrender to his power and eventually worship and believe in the void. It's a pity that neither Ancient One nor Odin has a few years left to live. After making up his mind, Harvey knew that it was not the time to make a big move yet, so he didn't think too much about it for the time being. Just by wandering around and selling a few pieces of information, he made $10 million. Harvey could only say that the more the merrier. Harvey was in a happy mood and swam in the swimming pool for several hours. It was also an exercise in his exquisite control of his own power. Having evolved more than 200 times, he can cause terrible damage with just a single stroke. The swimming pool will be shattered with just one stroke. In fact, Harvey had torn apart a lot of things more than once because he had just evolved and was unable to perfectly control his power. This is also the fundamental reason why Harvey doesn't want to recruit fixed people to help him manage the manor. Now, he is not yet at the point where he can control his own power as he pleases every time he evolves. Once some trouble occurs, it will easily affect his current identity. Then Harvey lay on the sun lounger in the courtyard of the manor, drinking freshly squeezed juice, eating fresh fruits, and watching the gorgeous dusk as if he was drunk. Life must be so comfortable and comfortable. After resting for a while, as night fell, Harvey changed into a handsome suit and leather shoes, and this time drove a Ferrari convertible out. After dinner, he will do some after-dinner exercises. But just as Harvey was driving out of the manor, a woman blocked Harvey's path. This is a beautiful red-haired woman wearing a tight leather jacket. She is the Natasha whom she met in Washington not long ago. Harvey was a little confused as to why Natasha, the Black Widow, found him. Have you been exposed? This idea was immediately rejected by him. He admits that he has never done anything out of the ordinary, and he is not high profile. Even when he travels, he drives normally, and the places he frequents are various restaurants. Because eating a lot of food is not only a kind of enjoyment, but also brings him many evolutionary points, so that is one of the things Harvey will do every day. It's just that Harvey's car was forced to stop. Even though he knew that Natasha had the ability to dodge, he couldn't hit her directly. You crazy woman, this is not how you touch porcelain. So after Harvey was forced to stop the car, he glanced at Natasha and cursed directly. Mr. Harvey Ambalaka, I am from the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. I don't mean any harm, I just have something I want to talk to you about. Facing this curse, Natasha's expression remained unchanged. Instead, she took out an ID and directly explained her purpose of coming. When she learned that Blue Star had been exposed to the universe, she was even suspected of being an alien god of death, and was currently behind Blue Star. Natasha felt that the task of testing Harvey Ambalaka to see if he was a superpower could not be delayed any longer. So Natasha chose to intercept directly. As long as they met above, the conversation and testing would become easier. Put aside the fact that I've never heard of the department you're talking about. Do you want to talk to me? Harvey didn't know what Natasha was going to do, but he just followed the behaviors and thoughts of ordinary people and said it without politeness. The Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau is a special force that specializes in handling various strange incidents. It has always been hiding in the dark and dealing with supernatural incidents. It is normal for most ordinary people to have never heard of this name. I'm sorry for my attitude, but I also have some unspeakable secrets. Therefore, in the face of Harvey Ambalaka's rudeness, Natasha first apologized, then directly took out the gun and pointed it at Harvey. Facing the dark hole of the gun, Harvey already knew Natasha's purpose, which was nothing more than to test whether he was not an ordinary person. If you have something to say, there's no need to use a gun, right? What is your purpose? Is it money? How much do you want? I can give you whatever I have. So Harvey shrank his eyes, raised his hands, showed a compromising expression on his face, and said in a flattering tone. Natasha also noticed that Harvey Ambalaka's slight change in expression and tone made her somewhat unpredictable about Harvey's thoughts. But Natasha thought for a moment and knew that Harvey couldn't hide it even if he wanted to in a crisis, so she moved her finger slightly closer to the trigger of the pistol. Don't. Harvey saw Natasha's movements, with a horrified expression on his face, curling up and shouting. He dared not resist at all because the bullets could not penetrate his body, and he did not believe that Natasha dared to shoot him directly. Bang, bang, bang. 3 consecutive gunshots rang out under the night sky. It's just that Natasha's shot, which was originally aimed at Harvey, changed direction and missed. Then, after a few seconds, Harvey touched his body in shock and found that he was not injured. I'm not dead. You crazy woman, what do you want to do? But Harvey soon reacted, looked at Natasha and cursed. It's okay, you can go. Natasha was a little disappointed when she saw Harvey's reaction, but she didn't continue to talk nonsense. She said something, got out of the way and walked towards the woods on the side of the road. After Natasha's figure entered the woods and disappeared. Harvey knew Natasha hadn't left yet, but he immediately reignited the engine and sped away quickly. After Harvey's car disappeared, Natasha walked out of the woods. She was absolutely certain that Harvey Ambalaka was not a superpower. Because if Harvey Ambalaka is really a person with superpowers, facing the upcoming shooting, he will definitely show some extraordinary abilities almost instinctively to protect himself. But from beginning to end, Harvey Ambalaka behaved like an ordinary person. The other party never said to call the police in front of her, which was in line with his status as a rich man. Rich people would not be so stupid as to say that they wanted to report the matter to the FBI in front of others. That will only make the other party become more aggressive and start a fight. Of course, it is not ruled out that Harvey Ambalaka was pretending, but if it was acted, then Harvey Ambalaka's acting skills would be too real. Immediately, Natasha drove away on her motorcycle. And only half an hour passed. Nick Fury sent a message asking her what she had done to Harvey Ambalaka. Because Harvey Ambalaka had already arrived at the FBI police station at this time, claiming to arrest a crazy woman, and the physical characteristics and clothing described were completely consistent with her. I just took the most efficient test. After testing, it can be confirmed that Harvey Ambalaka is not a person with superpowers. Facing this news, Natasha also gave an answer. Can you completely confirm? Nick Fury was also a little disappointed when he received the news. Can. Natasha immediately responded in the affirmative. Well, you don't have to observe Harvey Ambalaka. I'll help you deal with this trouble. Nick Fury saw Natasha reply immediately, knowing that Natasha must have done enough testing, so he withdrew the task of letting Natasha observe Harvey Ambalaka. Although he could pay the god of death to take action in future crises, the god of death was undoubtedly an uncertain factor. He could not be sure that in the critical moment when humans encountered other aliens, the god of death would definitely protect humans for the sake of money. This is the initial stage when they lack helpers, but there is no point in looking for superpowers and heroes too hastily. He could only pray that things would go smoothly so that he could be there before other hostile aliens actually arrived and harmed Blue Star. He can find some superheroes who are willing to help Blue Star. On the other side, after Harvey left the New York Police Department and got into the convertible, a smile appeared on Harvey's face. He spent a lot of money to maintain this identity, and he didn't want to be exposed to S.H.I.E.L.D. and affect his life. What he wants to do now is not much different from before. He usually goes to various places to eat normally and earns evolution points while enjoying himself. Occasionally, when he sees a mission that interests him, he can use his identity as the god of death to go out on a mission. What he has to do now is to wait for some opportunities. Harvey knew that the show should be done to the fullest, so he filled his stomach casually. Harvey did not return to his original manner, but went to a villa in New York. Harvey didn't even go out. He directly ordered a large number of takeaways to be delivered to his villa, and he honestly became a homebody at home. Every time Harvey eats a piece of high-calorie pizza, various steaks, pork chops and other foods, the system will prompt him to gain dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of evolution points. So 1 million evolution points may seem like a lot, but it's actually not that much. And if the Void people are in various harsh environments, they will evolve rapidly in order to adapt to the environment, and their strength will increase crazily. It's just that Harvey felt that there was no need to push himself when he could enjoy earning evolution points. There are still 9 years before the purple sweet potato spirit actually arrives. Just eating food is enough for him to evolve many times. Not to mention that he had already planned to go to Wakanda to absorb a large amount of vibranium when the time came. Although the smell of iron and steel absorbed made him nauseous, it was probably because it didn't taste very good. It is a substance that can only be absorbed in extremely harsh environments, so the evolutionary points given are very significant. During this period of being a homebody, Harvey sold his shares of Stark Industries. Harvey would also look at the dark web, and the bounty on Tony Stark had already been accepted in just a few days. This indicates that Iron Man Tony Stark will soon appear in the world. When Iron Man appears, the whole of New York will become even more chaotic. This can also be said to be the official start of the first phase of Marvel. Harvey will definitely not affect these causes and effects, because this is the most important event. If Tony Stark can live and change his mind, it will prove that his line most likely belongs to the main universe. If Tony Stark dies, it means that his line is just a line in the parallel universe. If it is the former, if he is in the main universe, when he has the opportunity to unlock the next template, he can give priority to the hero template of Korgaz, the Void Terror, or Kassadin, the Void Walker. Obtain the ability of one of them to make yourself stronger and perform better. If it's the latter, the world he lives in is just a line in a parallel universe. Harvey will take the initiative to win over various heroes, so that he can quickly get the opportunity to unlock the template and regain the ability of the Prophet. Anyway, no matter what universe he is in, Harvey already has the confidence to survive and evolve, and to be in an invincible position. Next, he just needs to see where the Iron Man thing goes. Harvey eats 5 meals a day, and each meal can feed hundreds of people, constantly gaining evolutionary points. After eating, Harvey would begin exercising to further strengthen his control over his own strength. After a month of being in this homebody life, Harvey completely gave up Nick Fury's idea. Before I knew it, more than 3 months had passed. In this otaku life, Harvey evolves once a week on average and has already evolved 18 times. Now that his offensive ability is sufficient for the time being, the priority to improve is of course his defensive ability. Harvey added all those 18 times to Void Skin's original 25 evolutions, and enhanced it to 43 evolutions. Now his physical strength and defense have reached a very terrifying level. Harvey has been to the Pacific Ocean and done many tests. After so many evolutions, he can go deep into the deepest part of the seabed without any protection using his physical body alone. Moreover, the water pressure at the bottom of the sea is a harsh environment. Frequent testing allowed Harvey's body to actively adapt to the environment and automatically evolve the ability to breathe in water 6 times. Now he has evolved a total of 262 times, and the directions of those 6 evolutions are all the evolution of breathing. The evolution brought about by adapting to the environment cannot be chosen by oneself in the direction of evolution. This is also the reason why Harvey doesn't want to go to various places and torture himself to evolve. After all, some abilities have evolved, but they are not of much use for the time being. Instead, they will lead to an increase in the number of evolutions, making the points required for his independent evolution higher. But on this day, Harvey was eating potato chips and watching the news, when suddenly the news changed. According to the news we just received, Tony Stark, who has been missing for more than 3 months, has successfully returned to New York. Harvey saw the news that the missing Tony Stark had returned safely to the United States. And Stark Industries is preparing to hold a press conference. Harvey saw this scene with a smile on his face, but he did not choose to short Stark Industries stock. Because he will buy in large quantities in the future, if he sells Stark Industries stocks at a low price after shorting them at this time, it will be easy for those in Financial Street to target him. Harvey chose to drive out to Stark Industries, intending to see the upcoming press conference with his own eyes. As long as Stark really intends to abandon arms, it means that this world has a high probability of dominating the universe. Harvey drives the latest model of Maserati on the roads of New York, accompanied by some loud gunshots and the sound of breaking glass. Harvey was unmoved by this and relied on his superb driving skills and hearing to quickly pass through. Soon, Harvey arrived at the venue where Stark Industries was about to hold a press conference. As soon as Harvey got out of the car, he attracted some people's attention. After all, this man is also one of New York's billionaires. Mr. Harvey Ambalaka, I am from Origin Technology. I wonder if I can talk to you. A white man in a suit and glasses saw Harvey's arrival and took the initiative to step forward and said politely, I came here to see Tony Stark. If you want me to invest, just try to make your plan bigger first. I will invest when the time is right. Harvey smiled and said casually after hearing this, and then walked into the venue. Specially come to see Mr. Tony Stark. Mr. Harvey Ambalaka, are you friends with Tony Stark? But you seem to have never attended any exhibition or banquet hosted by Tony Stark, right? Some beautiful reporters heard Harvey's words and took the initiative to step forward and want to interview the reason. You're right, I've never met Tony Stark in a formal setting. But Tony Stark, as a richer man than I am. If possible, it would be better to get acquainted with Tony Stark. Harvey also answered politely after hearing this. Is this a signal that you intend to invest in Stark Industries in the future? A beautiful news reporter heard these words and immediately asked a question. Harvey Ambalaka is 21 years old and one of the billionaires who has emerged in the past 2 years. In just over 2 years, Harvey Ambalaka's net worth has transformed, reaching an astonishing net worth of more than $3 billion. It can be said to be one of the miracles in New York. Countless people know that this is just the starting point of Harvey Ambalaka. It is difficult to estimate how amazing Harvey Ambalaka's wealth will be in the future. If Harvey Ambalaka is interested in investing in Stark Industries, he may do so in the future. Maybe it's possible, maybe. Okay, that's it for the answer. How about you please let me watch this press conference quietly? After hearing this, Harvey did not give a clear answer, but gave an ambiguous answer, and then politely refused these reporters further interviews. You cannot give too clear an answer to reporters. Even if you want to give a clear answer, you need to think carefully before speaking. Otherwise, it will be easy for these reporters to exaggerate and cause a series of troubles. Although Harvey's wealth alone can make these people lose their jobs or even disappear from the world. But now his identity is Harvey Ambalaka, one of the richest people in New York who has risen in recent years. These things must not be done casually, at least not in his current identity. Later, Harvey walked into the venue, where there were already many reporters and some celebrities waiting. Coulson was originally talking to Pepper Potts, hoping to learn something about Tony Stark's escape through her. After all, he was surrounded by the heavily armed 10 Rings gang and managed to break out of the siege with just a slight injury to his arm. This was obviously not something that an ordinary person could do. Why is he here? But Coulson suddenly saw Harvey Ambalaka also coming, and said with some surprise. When Pepper saw Coulson, who claimed to have a long list of names that were difficult to pronounce, he turned his attention elsewhere. So little Pepper also looked over and saw a tall and handsome Asian man wearing a suit. Harvey Ambalaka, Mr. Coulson, are you surprised by his arrival? Pepper asked with some curiosity and confusion. I would like to ask, Miss Potts, are Mr. Harvey Ambalaka and Mr. Stark friends? Coulson looked at Pepper and asked politely. No, although Tony and I have both heard of his reputation, I'm sure Tony has never seen him. Hearing this, little Pepper shook her head without any hesitation. She was well aware of Tony Stark's various itineraries, and she knew basically all the people Tony had come into contact with, including Harvey Ambalaka. Harvey Ambalaka also never had anything like an appointment to visit Tony. Okay, Excuse me. Coulson knew that if he continued to ask, he would not be able to get any useful information, so he did not continue to ask, but left to the side without disturbing Pepper. Harvey himself randomly found a position with a good view and looked at the platform in the center about 10 meters away. Soon, Tony Stark, with his hands bandaged, came to the podium escorted by his bodyguard Happy Hogan. Can everyone please sit down? Please sit down so you can all see me. I can order whatever I want. Although Tony Stark was injured and looked unhappy, his mouth was as casual as ever. As soon as these words came out, the reporters and other visiting guests immediately sat down. Tony Stark sat in front of the podium and saw Harvey Ambulaka, who stood out at the end. Although Harvey Ambulaka has not officially met, there have been a lot of rumors about Harvey Ambulaka in recent years. So Tony Stark has heard of this guy, and his identity is quite easy to remember. He is one of the few rich Asians in New York. To him, Harvey Ambulaka was just a guy who got rich through bad luck, without any real substance. So he only remembered Harvey Ambulaka to an extent. However, although the other party is not as rich as himself, he is undoubtedly a rich man. It is not difficult to guess the purpose of the other party's visit. He may want to talk about investment. Facing Tony Stark's gaze, Harvey just smiled and nodded. If it were the previous Tony Stark, he would definitely have a chat with this Harvey Ambulaka after holding the official press conference. Let's see if this guy is here to invest, but Tony Stark has just experienced that incident, and his body was also injured, so he doesn't have so much mental energy. And he also knew what he was about to announce next. How much impact will it have on Stark Industries stock, so Tony Stark doesn't have that idea anymore. Afterwards, Tony Stark began to speak about the classic scene that is remembered by countless people. So I am preparing to close down the weapons production department of Stark International Corporation as soon as possible. When Tony Stark decided that Stark Industries would give up the arms industry, it immediately caused an uproar and attracted various doubts. The bald stand next to Tony Stark was forcing a smile. When Harvey saw this extremely familiar scene, a smile appeared on his face. All of this was so familiar that he now had 9 levels of certainty that this was the main Marvel universe. Tony Stark just noticed that this Harvey Ambulaka was not surprised at all because he suddenly said that he wanted to close the weapons production department. Instead, he seemed to be happy. If he remembered correctly, Harvey Ambulaka also purchased shares of Stark Industries, and the amount was at least $500 million United States dollars. But now Harvey Ambulaka did not show the slightest emotion of disbelief, anger, etc. because the stock was about to fall sharply. What is this? Tony Stark was also a little confused. But while Tony Stark was thinking, he noticed that Harvey Ambulaka had turned around and seemed to be leaving. Colonel Rhodes helped stop him. I want to talk to him. Tony Stark shouted immediately upon seeing this. Stop which one? Although Rhodes did not understand Tony Stark's behavior, he did not refuse when he heard his good friend's words. He was just a little surprised who Tony wanted to stop. That Harvey Ambulaka, Tony Stark said quickly. And when Tony Stark wanted Rhodes to do something, Coulson has arrived in front of Harvey. Mr. Harvey Ambulaka, I am a special agent with the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. Can we talk? Coulson asked with a polite smile. You and that crazy woman are together. I have been hiding for so long, and you are still haunting me. Harvey saw Coulson stopping him and was not polite at all when he heard these words. Mr. Harvey Ambulaka, that was just a misunderstanding. We meant no harm. We just want to find out some information from you. I can promise you that I will never hurt you like that crazy woman did. And I don't have any firearms on me. Coulson also heard about the previous FBI questioning of their department. There was a trace of embarrassment on his face. He patted his chest, pockets, trousers and other places with both hands to indicate that he did not carry any dangerous weapons. What exactly do you want to talk to me about? Harvey knew that if he forced his way out, it would only arouse suspicion more easily, so he looked at Coulson with some suspicion and spoke. This is not the place to talk. If it's convenient, you can choose a place where you think you're safe but don't have too many outsiders. I can completely guarantee that I will never hurt you even a hair. Now their Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency is extremely short of helpers, and the Avengers have never made any progress. So Coulson didn't want to give up on anyone who had a certain probability of having superpowers. There were some reasons why Harvey Ambulaka was targeted by them, but Natasha was a little too anxious and reckless that time. So Coulson wanted to talk to Harvey Ambulaka again to see if he could make some progress. You seem to be busy. I'm Tony Stark, Harvey Ambulaka. Although we are meeting for the first time, I think you must have heard of my name, just like I have heard of yours. Looking for a place to chat. It won't take up too much of your time. My time is also valuable. At this time, Tony Stark watched the two people standing at the gate talking. Without Rhodes stopping him, he walked directly up and said hello naturally. It's just that his words revealed pride and arrogance that could not be rejected. When Harvey saw Tony Stark actually approaching him, his eyes flashed and he agreed. Then come with me. When Tony Stark saw Harvey Ambulaka, he didn't refuse or be surprised. He just said casually and walked away. Along with Harvey Ambulaka and Coulson, they went to the room next to the press conference venue. Harvey Ambulaka, as far as I know you have bought a lot of our Stark Industries stock in the past 2 years. Based on the current market value of our Stark Industries, it is worth about $1 billion. It is said that when you buy stocks, you can only make a profit, not a loss. But because of the news I announced today, your wealth should drop significantly. But you don't seem surprised or angry at all. Instead, you look a little happy. Won't you feel heartbroken that your wealth will plummet from now on? Tony Stark poured himself a glass of water and asked tentatively. You should know that his luxurious Stark Manor cost tens of millions of dollars to build. $1 billion is a huge amount of wealth that many people dare not even imagine in their lifetime. If such a large amount of money were to be casually reduced by half, most people would simply not be able to bear it, and there might even be a sudden ups and downs, and they would be completely wiped out. As soon as Tony Stark's words came out, Coulson, who was standing aside, was moved in his heart and looked at Harvey Ambulaka. It was precisely because of this vicious and almost prophetic vision that the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau focused on Harvey Ambulaka. If Harvey Ambulaka had made a mistake, they would not have doubted it, but Harvey Ambulaka had never made a mistake. This time Tony Stark suddenly announced that he would stop making weapons, which was a sudden plunge. What do I have to be sad about? I sold all my stocks more than 2 months ago. The bad news you announced today will cause Stark Industries stock to plummet. It just proves that what I did was a smart move. Harvey faced Tony Stark's temptation and said with the smile still on his face. You said you sold out a long time ago. Tony Stark said in disbelief when he heard these words. When Coulson heard these words, he immediately took out a tablet and checked it. It was discovered that Harvey Ambulaka had sold his stocks worth $1.13 billion in batches at almost the highest price within a month before Tony Stark disappeared. Before Tony Stark announced today that he would stop making weapons, Stark Industries stock had been rising steadily. As long as you buy and hold Stark Industries stocks, it is no exaggeration to say that you can make money every day just by lying down. However, Harvey Ambulaka chose to withdraw from the game, and this purchase and sale allowed Harvey Ambulaka to make a profit of at least more than $300 million. This made Coulson look at Harvey Ambulaka in disbelief. Who is this person? Does he have superpowers or does he really have such extraordinary vicious vision? But when he thought about his purpose of stopping Harvey Ambulaka, Coulson was relieved. In the past year or so, I have gained a lot of percentage points and received a lot of dividends. I felt that I had earned enough, so I naturally sold it. Facing Tony Stark's disbelieving gaze, Harvey Ambulaka spread his hands and said with a smile. Tony Stark also noticed the man who came with him, looking up information just now. Now he heard what seemed like a natural thing and saw Harvey Ambulaka looking carefree and happy. If he hadn't suddenly announced the suspension of weapons production today, Stark Industries stock would still be on a rising trend. Normal people would just continue to invest because it would get higher and higher in the future, but in the end, Harvey Ambulaka could run away. No wonder others are so excited. You don't seem to be panicked at all, and you are even a little happy. But how long will your shitty luck last for you? Tony Stark looked at Harvey Ambulaka, with some doubts in his words. That's right, in Tony Stark's eyes, the reason why Harvey Ambulaka rose to power so quickly was because of bad luck. Ha ha ha, Tony Stark, you are really not polite at all. In terms of wealth, I am still far behind you. In terms of intelligence, I can't compare to you, who has the mind of a genius scientist. Whether you regard what I do as shitluck or anything else. But it still doesn't affect my making money, right? Harvey was not angry when he heard this and said with a smile. So why did you come to my press conference today? To show off your foresight to me. Tony Stark looked at Harvey Ambulaka, who was smiling extremely brightly, and felt annoyed for some reason, and asked. Coulson also looked at Harvey Ambulaka from the side. To be honest, he was also curious about why Harvey Ambulaka, who never attended formal occasions, suddenly came to see the news about Tony Stark today. The press conference was on site. I'm showing off my foresight to you. I never thought of it this way. I just wanted to come over and have a look because you've been missing for a few months for no apparent reason. Can you tell me where you came back from? So that when I go on vacation in the future, I can hide in that place. Harvey shook his head when he heard this and smiled calmly. Afghanistan. When Tony Stark heard that he was not here to show off, his expression and tone softened a lot, and he revealed a name. Afghanistan is where terrorists gather. You really went to an incredible place. Harvey's face showed some surprise when he heard this. Yes, but even if I didn't tell you, you wouldn't be able to go to that place, right? After all, your business scope is just mediocre real estate and stock markets. You have not created anything unique to you to add value to your wealth. Harvey's surprised expression made Tony Stark feel a little helpful. His words were still harsh, but they also pointed out the poverty of Harvey's current means of making money. Now it's real estate and the stock market, but that won't be the case in the future. Perhaps you will ask me for help in the future, and you may need my help. Harvey didn't pay attention to Tony Stark's slightly mocking words, but said with a smile. Can I ask for something from you? No way, absolutely impossible. Tony Stark first looked at Harvey with doubt, then he laughed and said decisively. Don't be too harsh. After all, a genius like you can create epic making advanced technologies many times. It means that everything is possible, doesn't it? Harvey saw Tony Stark's proud look, poked his chest with his index finger, and said lightly. Coulson was not surprised to hear about advanced technology, because Tony Stark's mind is undoubtedly world famous. When Tony Stark saw Harvey's actions and heard these words, his eyes shrank. Except for the dead Ethan and Colonel Rhodes, no one else should know that there is a nuclear reactor on his chest. He was sure that Rhodes had never dealt with Harvey Ambulaka, so how did Harvey Ambulaka know about it? Who are you? Tony Stark's expression changed, and he looked at Harvey solemnly. Harvey Ambulaka, you call him a lucky guy. Harvey did not answer the question when he heard this. He just responded to Tony Stark with the impression Tony Stark had on him just now. I think we will have to deal with each other again in the future, so let's stop talking about it this time. Immediately, Harvey stood up and walked outside. Coulson had no idea what went wrong in the conversation between Harvey Ambulaka and Tony Stark, causing Tony Stark's sudden change of attitude. But Coulson didn't want to let Harvey Ambulaka go. He wanted to have a detailed chat with Harvey Ambulaka. Mr. Tony Stark, this is Coulson, Special Agent from the Homeland Strategic Defense Offense and Logistics Support Agency. I would like to consult you regarding your successful escape from Afghanistan. But you should be busy now, so I'll visit you next time. So Coulson politely introduced himself to Tony Stark and put his business card on the table. Let Tony Stark make some impressions of yourself so that you can talk to him the next time you meet. Then, Coulson immediately followed. Tony Stark looked at Harvey Ambulaka leaving, his eyes twinkling. He was somewhat elusive about Harvey Ambulaka, but now he also knew that Obadiah Stane was definitely looking for him. He also wanted to talk to Obadiah Stane about his current thoughts. Chapter 11. Harvey left the press conference venue all the way and went to his luxury car. Let's go to a place where I feel safe. I will listen to what you have to say. Harvey Ambulaka looked at Coulson, who was catching up, and directly greeted him to get in the car. Coulson opened the car door without any courtesy and got in. Harvey drove away, heading towards his manor. What exactly do you want to do with me? Harvey asked casually along the way. Mr. Harvey Ambulaka. Our Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau is a special force established by the International Security Council to deal with various bizarre incidents. First of all, I can assure you that our department does not have any ill intentions towards high taxpayers like you. It's just that the speed of your rise is undoubtedly very fast and smooth, so after our judgment, you may have some superpowers. So we want to talk to you. If possible, we hope to ask you to join us and contribute to Blue Star. Coulson didn't hide anything after hearing this. He formally introduced himself and stated his purpose. That means you have no basis, and just because you suspected that I had superpowers, you sent that crazy woman to test me. Or the kind where you shoot to test. This doesn't seem like a smart move at all to talk to me and win me over to join you. Harvey didn't give Coulson a good look because of Coulson's friendly attitude, but continued to complain about the bad impression Black Widow Natasha had given him. Because we encountered some things that day, the agent acted a little anxiously. But although she gave you some shock, she probably didn't really hurt you, so please forgive me. Coulson looked a little embarrassed when he heard Harvey's unceremonious attitude. If he were an ordinary person, Coulson's attitude could be tougher, but facing a high-dollar taxpayer like Harvey Ambulaka who has no dirty information or handles, his attitude should not be too harsh to avoid leaving a worse impression. Even if Harvey Ambulaka is not a superpower, according to Harvey Ambulaka's various deeds in the past 2 years or so. If Harvey Ambulaka is given some time to rise, he might become an investor in some of their projects one day in the future. She didn't hurt me, but she scared me for a while and I didn't dare to go out. Harvey's expression softened a little, but his words still contained complaints and dissatisfaction. Mr. Harvey Ambulaka, I'm deeply sorry for this. Coulson also honestly apologized to Black Widow Natasha. The ideal of contributing to Blue Star is great, provided that your internal original intentions have not changed from beginning to end, and that you have not become a tool of some politicians. But I think it's impossible for you not to be controlled by those politicians. After all, your department was established by the International Security Council. I'm afraid it's been controlled by them from beginning to end. You can't act freely on many things, right? And I'm just a common man who has some money and doesn't have to worry about work and money. So please don't bother me again. If I really receive some help and protection from you in the future, I will sincerely express my gratitude to you. But you should know, definitely not now. Harvey parked the car, shared some thoughts, and finally distanced himself from the relationship. He can get paid to do things according to the mission, but it is absolutely impossible for him to join the Avengers and be controlled and instructed by others. What he wants to do depends entirely on his own wishes. If others want to order him, they have to see whether the other party has that much ability. At least the SHIELD branch of Hydra did not, nor did American politicians. As for the public's condemnation, it could not affect him. He doesn't want to reveal his identity now because the time is not yet ripe, and he doesn't want to break his current comfortable life and affect the speed of his evolution. But SHIELD went too far, so he taught SHIELD in the United States a lesson. Coulson saw the car stop, and from Harvey Ambulaka's mouth, he heard the disgust for politicians and the idea of not wanting to be controlled by others. He also could not deny that Harvey Ambulaka was telling the truth. I understand. Thank you, Mr. Harvey Ambulaka, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to me about your thoughts. So Coulson was silent for a while, showed some apology on his face, and spoke. Then, Coulson opened the car door and walked out. Although this conversation was not pleasant, Coulson undoubtedly confirmed Harvey Ambulaka's thoughts and attitude. Although he is not entirely sure whether Harvey Ambulaka is a superpower. But through his attitude, Coulson was certain that Harvey Ambulaka would not agree to join them, regardless of whether he was a superpower or not. Because no matter how nice the original intention of establishing the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency is, it is still an organization that will be influenced by politicians. This is indeed some of the difficulties and obstacles that will inevitably arise if they want to win over others later. It is impossible to completely eliminate this obstacle, so they can only find ways to vaguely downplay other people's influence on this matter. After Harvey saw Coulson get out of the car knowingly, he drove away without any nonsense. Coulson sent a message asking someone to pick him up. It wouldn't be wise for him to approach Tony Stark directly now, as Stark Industries is about to experience a period where its stock will plummet. This will definitely cause Tony Stark to get into some trouble. If he is not in a good mood, it will be impossible to have a good chat with him. As for the contact with Harvey Ambalaka, he had no intention of reporting it, because even if he reported these things back, it would only make other people in the department unhappy. Harvey went all the way back to his luxurious manor. Because after contacting Coulson, Harvey can now safely return to the manor he has been away from for several months. Because someone comes regularly to clean it every week, there is no dust accumulated in the manor. Harvey returned home and turned on the television in the hall. The TV is filled with news about Stark Industries. Countless people said that Tony Stark was crazy, and some hosts gave extremely exaggerated performances. Things like stocks may rise and fall at any time because of some rumors and deeds. Not to mention, Tony Stark's statement about stopping the production of weapons was a bombshell. Harvey opened the stock software, and sure enough, Stark Industries stock was emitting a green light and falling continuously. Countless retail investors who hold shares and some large investors who hold more votes are frantically selling their stocks. I'm afraid that the value of the stocks in my hands will fall in 1 second at night. Harvey knew that by the time Tony Stark announced his transformation of the energy industry and showed results, the value of the stock would rise significantly. But the stock's decline is just the beginning, so it's not yet time for him to prepare to buy a large amount of stocks. Harvey knew that it was absolutely impossible for Tony Stark, such an arrogant and conceited man, to directly believe in the void. He must make some preparations and inducements to wait for the opportunity to come. But now is just the beginning. Tony Stark hasn't officially admitted that he is Iron Man yet, so things can't be rushed. When Tony Stark discovered that the arc reactor on his chest would have some negative effects on his body, that time was actually the time when Tony Stark wanted his body to be intact the most. Although Tony Stark subsequently obtained various diaries left by his father due to S.H.I.E.L.D's guidance, he invented new elements and survived that crisis. But that time was undoubtedly the best time for him to win over Tony Stark. Harvey remembers that it won't be long before Tony Stark meets that moment, and now he just has to wait. Harvey has many ideas in his mind, but they have not yet reached the implementation stage. Before he was reincarnated into this Marvel world as an adult, he grew up in an orphanage. Because he is Asian, he was ostracized by the orphanage. However, as a person with an adult soul in his previous life, he would naturally not take it seriously when he was ostracized, but worked hard to learn to adapt to the world. He once thought about what if he could only be an ordinary person in this life. He will find a way to return to the heaven in this life before 2011. There is a long-rumored saying in Marvel that the rich rely on technology and the poor rely on mutation. As for technology, Harvey doesn't have that much money, nor does he have such a good mind. Mutations are often accompanied by accidents that can easily lead to death. He wasn't sure if he was as tough as the superheroes in the Marvel world. So Harvey knows that if he is just an ordinary person, the biggest opportunity is to take out a loan at the right time and spend all his savings to buy shares of Stark Industries. If he can double his net worth, even if he cannot be said to be a top rich man in this life, he will definitely have enough food and clothing and live a happy life. It was just the awakening of the system that brought about huge changes in his life, but Harvey was never impatient. Now Harvey also has something to do, which is to temporarily mortgage various properties under his name to cash out a large amount of money. On the other side, Tony Stark and Obadiah Stane fully expressed their thoughts. Tony Stark quickly returned to his Stark manor. "Jarvis, help me investigate Harvey Ambalaka." Tony Stark came to his underground studio and said directly. As long as he wants to know all the information that appears on the internet, even some top secrets, it is certainly not difficult to investigate Harvey Ambalaka. "Okay, sir, I'll get it for you." A nice mechanically synthesized male voice directly responded to Tony Stark's order. Soon all the information that Harvey Ambalaka could investigate appeared directly in front of Tony Stark. Tony Stark had only heard some rumors about Harvey Ambalaka before, but because of Harvey Ambalaka, he somehow found out that he had successfully built the arc reactor. So Tony Stark also looked at it seriously, wanting to know where this person came from. Harvey Ambalaka was also considered a gifted prodigy when he was a child. Even in a public school that only served the poor, Harvey Ambalaka had completed the achievement of skipping grades several times in a row. He himself entered MIT at the age of 15 and graduated with the highest honors. Therefore, Harvey Ambaraka, in front of Tony Stark, can be regarded as a less mediocre genius at best. Just because of Harvey Ambaraka's khaki identity, he grew up in a somewhat bad situation. Even if he wanted to blend in with other groups in the school and class, he couldn't blend in, so the data showed that Harvey Ambaraka's previous personality was relatively taciturn. Until he was 18 years old, almost 3 years ago, Harvey Ambaraka bought a lottery ticket and won a prize. It also started from winning the lottery, and the rise of Harvey Ambaraka can be called the beginning of a legend. These are common topics discussed in New York in the past 2 years, and Tony Stark did not feel depressed but patiently studied them. Among them are some of the moves that Harvey Ambaraka has made since his fortune, and also include some of the recent moves of Harvey Ambaraka. About a year and a half ago, Harvey Ambaraka began to buy Stark Industries stocks intermittently with the large amount of money he earned. With a total purchase of more than $800 million, it can be seen that Harvey Ambaraka is very optimistic about their Stark Industries. Harvey Ambaraka sold the shares in batches. This information about the shareholders was invisible to ordinary people, but it was invisible to Tony Stark. I actually sold the shares more than 2 months ago. Tony Stark looked at all this and felt weird. During this year and a half, Harvey Ambaraka used only $800 million in funds. In the past year and a half, including the increase in Stark Industries, there have also been regular dividends from Stark Industries. Coupled with Yu Gaofeng's exit, Harvey Ambaraka earned hundreds of millions of dollars in just over a year and a half. This does not require Harvey Ambaraka to use too much manpower, he just invests in the stocks he is optimistic about. It's just that Tony Stark couldn't understand the reason why Harvey Ambaraka, who had seen Stark Industries so much before, suddenly did this. The dog didn't believe Harvey Ambaraka's previous statement that he had made enough money so he sold it. You must know that his decision to change careers and not making weapons is something only he knows. Even Pepper, whom he trusted most, didn't know until he held the press conference. And if this incident hadn't happened, it would have been impossible for Stark Industries shares to fall. But Harvey Ambaraka just sold it and successfully ran away before Stark stock was about to plummet. Before people make a decision, there are often reasons. Not to mention, deciding to sell a large number of stocks that were originally bull stocks requires careful consideration. Even if Harvey Ambaraka had decided to sell his shares during the period of his disappearance, it would have been understandable to him. Facts have proved that during the more than 2 months since he disappeared, many people sold all their stocks. Although many people bought it, the stock did not fall, but it did not increase in value much. But Harvey Ambaraka decided to sell before he went to Afghanistan and disappeared for 2 months. And it was still sold in batches, so that Harvey Ambaraka ran away when he was at his highest point. Harvey Ambaraka has never been too deeply involved with the military or the country. This makes Tony Stark unable to understand the logic of Harvey Ambaraka's behavior no matter how he thinks about it. Harvey Ambaraka is said to have prophet-like abilities. But how could a person like Tony Stark believe in science and technology? Jarvis, let me take a look at the news about Stark Industries from the beginning of this year to July this year. So Tony Stark didn't give up, but gave a direct order. Okay, sir. Jarvis did not ask why, but followed the instructions and retrieved all the news about Stark Industries in those months. Tony Stark rubbed his chin, pondering the news from those months. It's just that the news in those few months was basically positive, except for the past scandals that criticized Stark Industries' weapons production and caused disasters. Even if those scandals are not suppressed by other shareholders on the board of directors, they will not affect the value of Stark Industries stock at all. After all, as long as their Stark Industries and their advanced level of weapons production are not surpassed by others, they will have the value contained in the weapons. The more Tony Stark studied, the more he felt that Harvey Ambaraka was not a simple person. Jarvis calculated the current total wealth of Harvey Ambaraka's stock, plus his inherent assets. Tony Stark asked casually, "Sir, please wait a moment. We are counting Harvey Ambaraka's bank assets, as well as the valuations of various properties and land under his name. Estimated, excluding any fractions, the current total value of Harvey Ambaraka's wealth is approximately $4.827 billion. Jarvis also quickly responded to Tony Stark's instructions and gave an approximate amount. Quote. When Tony Stark heard this amount, his eyes showed surprise, and he couldn't help but feel a little admiration in his heart. In less than 3 years, Harvey Ambulaka used more than $4 million to increase his wealth to this astonishing amount. This has to be said to be a very remarkable thing. Moreover, no one under Harvey Ambulaka has to pay wages, everything belongs to individuals. Harvey Ambulaka is only 21 years old now, and will be 22 in a few months. He is at the beginning of his life and career. Tony Stark certainly knows that life is not always easy. He really wanted this to be Harvey Ambulaka's peak. But Stark Industries' stock plummeted, making Harvey Ambulaka lucky enough to run away. It proves that Harvey Ambulaka's legendary road has not stopped yet, but is about to rise step by step. Tony Stark thought that during the day, Harvey Ambulaka told him that maybe one day he would ask for something from him. The admiration in Tony Stark's heart disappeared. No matter how desperate he was, he would never ask for help from Harvey Ambulaka. What's more, it's impossible for him to be down, even though Stark Industries has suffered a sharp decline. But he can turn it all around and keep Stark Industries still standing. If that day comes, he will definitely come up with a way not to ask Harvey Ambulaka. Jarvis, help me keep an eye on Harvey Ambulaka's news. If he makes any big moves, let me know. Tony Stark ordered. Okay, sir. Jarvis heard the words and agreed. It's not like Tony Stark didn't guess. The real culprit behind his kidnapping may be Harvey Ambulaka. That's why Harvey Ambulaka knew that he had made the arc reactor. But according to the information collected by Jarvis, Harvey Ambulaka just eats and drinks every day, and sometimes picks up some girls when he's interested and spends the night together. Occasionally, I buy some luxuriously decorated and valuable manor villas. Harvey Ambulaka rarely leaves the United States. It can be said that he spends 95% of his time in the United States. Harvey Ambulaka basically drives his own car when traveling, and occasionally drags his car, and his driving skills seem to be very good. It seems that Harvey Ambulaka fits the bill perfectly, a young man who has made a fortune and feels he has a lot of time, and he likes to enjoy and eat everywhere. Harvey Ambulaka never invited anyone to banquets or exhibitions. So this was the first time they met before today, so Harvey Ambulaka had no opportunity or reason to enmity with him. The most important thing is that his trip to Afghanistan can be said to be absolutely secretive. After all, this was a collaboration with the military to test fire his latest weapon, so apart from the military, only the people closest to him knew about his itinerary. This was also the reason why after seeing all the experiences of Harvey Ambulaka, he completely ruled out the possibility that the other party was the mastermind. The thought of someone who knew his itinerary made Tony Stark's eyes flash. Although he didn't know where Harvey Ambulaka knew that he had developed the arc reactor. What he knows is what his most important thing is to do now. Tony Stark began to devote himself to researching the new arc reactor. Although he built the arc reactor in Afghanistan, due to the emergency situation and harsh environment at the time, there was room for improvement in the arc reactor. Now this thing like a light bulb is related to his life. So Tony Stark didn't feel sleepy at all and started staying up all night to produce. The next afternoon, Stark Industries' stock price fell wildly overnight, falling by more than 30 points, and this was not the lowest limit. It can be said that the market value of Stark Industries has directly evaporated by 1/3, and countless investors who bought Stark Industries have suffered huge losses. The news is all about Stark Industries making stupid decisions. There are also many people who are denouncing Tony Stark and asking why he is so stupid. The playboy who was originally admired by countless people in New York suddenly made many people in New York have an extremely bad impression of him just because of one decision. Tony Stark didn't care at all about this. After improving the arc reactor, he asked Pepper to install it for him. Tony Stark immediately went to the American Air Force Base to meet Rhodes. The only people he can trust now are Pepper and Rhodes. It was just that Tony Stark was frustrated because Rhodes did not agree to cooperate with him. Tony Stark could only return home and start secretly making the Mark II. Time passed quickly, only 11 days. Tony Stark successfully produced and tested the Mark II, and it has already conducted a test flight. After the test flight, Tony Stark has just decided on the color matching of the Mark III. But at this moment, Tony Stark suddenly heard Jarvis and reported news outside the Mark II. "Sir, we have detected the latest big movement of Harvey Ambalaka. Do you want to report it?" Because Tony Stark has been thinking about Mark II these days, his brain did not remember why Jarvis suddenly said this. But in just a few seconds, Tony Stark remembered what he had told Jarvis to keep an eye on Harvey Ambalaka. "Report, what has he done recently?" The ecstasy brought about by the successful test flight was diluted a lot in Tony Stark's heart, and he asked with some concern. During the day, Harvey Ambalaka mortgaged more than half of the properties and land under his name, raised $3.55 billion United States dollars, and purchased a large number of shares in Stark Industries. With the shares he currently holds, although he does not yet have the right to speak, Harvey Ambalaka is fully qualified to enter the Stark Industries Board of Directors to observe. You can listen to some of Stark Industries' future planning directions. And he can also freely enter and exit some not-secret situations in Stark Industries. Jarvis also said it when he heard the words. When Tony Stark heard the news, he had already expected it, but when he found out that Harvey Ambalaka had actually done this, he was both shocked and full of questions. What's the reason for this guy to do this time? Tony Stark clearly knows that Stark Industries is still in a period of turmoil. Because of one of his decisions, the stock dropped 40 points. At this time, many people were too late to run away. Although through the efforts of Obadiah Stane and the board of directors, they were able to stay here temporarily and not lose more. But in order to return to its previous peak, Stark Industries must make some big moves. He now also has an idea, which is to switch to the energy industry. As long as he makes good use of the arc reactor, it will undoubtedly be an industry that is not inferior to arms. But before he could successfully transform Stark Industries, Harvey Ambalaka seemed to have made a large purchase directly without warning. It seems certain that Stark Industries will increase its stock price again. Because his previous kidnapping was somewhat suspicious, Tony Stark planned to search to see if the real culprit was someone close to him. Therefore, Tony Stark's decision to switch to the energy industry currently only exists in his own mind and has not been told to anyone. Even Little Pepper, the person closest to him, didn't know what he was going to do next. There was no leakage of information at all, so Tony Stark was completely unable to understand the logic of Harvey Ambalaka's behavior. When Stark Industries was at its peak and many people were optimistic about it, Harvey Ambalaka quietly chose to withdraw and make a lot of money. Then, when Stark Industries was currently in a downturn and many outsiders were not optimistic about it, Harvey Ambalaka directly used more funds than before to directly purchase a large number of stocks. This makes Tony Stark feel as if all his secrets have been seen through by Harvey Ambalaka. This feeling made Tony Stark feel a little irritable for no reason. Tony Stark suddenly saw the news. Stark Industries' annual charity gala was reporting on his problem and saying that he had a concussion. Harvey Ambalaka, did he go to this charity gala? Tony Stark asked. Harvey Ambalaka was invited, but it is not clear whether he arrived, sir. Jarvis paused and said apologetically. You can help me finish assembling it first. You don't have to wait for me, my dear. Tony Stark heard that he could not collect information, looked at the time, left a message, and immediately drove out. Tony Stark quickly arrived at the venue where Stark Industries held a charity ball. This is a ball for the upper class, with handsome guys and big shots serving expensive clothes, as well as many young, beautiful and hot beauties. The arrival of Tony Stark immediately attracted the attention of countless people. After Tony Stark handed the card to the parking attendant, he glanced around, casually echoing the people who greeted him, trying to find Harvey Ambalaka. He wanted to talk to Harvey Ambalaka again, and wanted to know how much the other party knew about him. But it's a pity that Tony Stark did not see Harvey Ambalaka. So Tony Stark could only go to Opa first, and wanted to ask him why he held this charity ball, something he didn't know. The two chatted for a few words, just when Tony was about to go inside and ask Opa again. Accompanied by the roar of the car, an Audi R8 parked on the side of the road in a handsome and elegant manner. New York is prosperous, but most of the cars owned by the upper class are familiar to each other. The arrival of this silver Audi R8 immediately let most people present know who the owner of this car was. Among them, Tony Stark has specially investigated the other party, and of course he knows who the owner of this car is. Soon the car door opened, and a tall, handsome man with black hair and black eyes got out of the car. Directly misappropriated $3.5 billion of working capital and became one of the shareholders of Stark Industries in one fell swoop. In the future, there will be one more celebrity. Some people who knew more information also discussed in low voices when they saw this man's arrival. He's actually going to the party. He didn't bring a female companion this time, did he? When some young and beautiful women saw Harvey Ambulaka's arrival, they were all in disbelief and at the same time a little eager to give it a try. Although Harvey Ambulaka attended Tony Stark's press conference last time, this is undoubtedly the first time Harvey Ambulaka has appeared at a party. This kind of charity ball usually requires a female companion. If you are lucky, you can spend the night together. Tony Stark stood on the steps, meeting Harvey Ambulaka's eyes. Tony Stark didn't waste any time and walked up directly. It is rumored that you do not attend such occasions. Although I sent you an invitation, why did you come this time? Tony Stark came to Harvey and asked. There should be a lot of delicious food here. I happened to receive an invitation and had nothing to do, so I decided to come and have a look. And I feel like you want to talk to me now, so I'm here. Harvey heard a smile on his face. So you have time to talk to me? Tony Stark heard the certainty in Harvey Ambulaka's words and did not deny it. That depends on what you want to talk about. Harvey did not give a clear answer after hearing this. Let's talk after we go inside. Tony Stark looked around after hearing this and said. Harvey nodded in agreement and followed Tony Stark in. The two people seemed to have known each other for a long time when talking, which made many people around them start to gossip. Coulson saw that Harvey Ambulaka had also come and had an unknown conversation with Stark, so he decided to find an opportunity to chat with Stark. Why are you suddenly buying shares of Stark Industries? Stark and Harvey entered the venue together, and the two went directly to the unmanned balcony outside the ball. The reason is of course that I want to make more money. Harvey looked at the night scene outside and said calmly. So I'm asking why you are suddenly optimistic about Stark Industries again. When Tony Stark heard this confusing answer, his words were like a question. He couldn't figure this out, so he could only find out through Harvey Ambulaka. With your brain, it shouldn't be difficult to figure out why I did this, right? After hearing this, Harvey turned his head and glanced at Tony Stark's chest, and said meaningfully. Who told you that, Oba? Just this glance made Tony Stark feel like his whole body had been seen through. His eyes shrank and he immediately started to guess, tentatively naming the most likely name. Trash that is dispensable and can be erased at any time is not worth my friendship. Harvey said calmly after hearing this. Quote. Tony Stark heard a kind of indifference in Harvey Ambulaka's tone. This was not an act, he could feel it. In the eyes of Harvey Ambulaka, Obadiah Stane was like a nobody worth mentioning. But no matter what, Obadiah Stane has been cooperating with the military for many years and is a well-known figure in the United States. What gives Harvey Ambulaka the confidence to say these words? I have no grievances against you. I just pretend I didn't hear these words. Tony Stark didn't think highly of Oba Stane in his heart, but he was a figure of the same generation as his father and one of the veterans of Stark Industries. So he doesn't say he thinks highly of Obadiah Stane, but he doesn't think he's stupid or anything like that, and his relationship over the years has been okay. Judging from the various backgrounds and origins of Harvey Ambulaka he investigated, once Obadiah Stane knew that Harvey Ambulaka looked down upon him so much. Then what Harvey Ambulaka will face may be a devastating blow. Although Harvey Ambulaka made Tony Stark very unhappy, it has to be said that the two actually had no hatred. You actually want to help me hide it? Thank you very much. As a thank you, Tony Stark, I can give you a reminder. Do you want to hear it? When Harvey heard Tony Stark's words, the indifference and calmness in his eyes disappeared instantly, and a smile appeared on his face. I'm not begging you this time, it's what you want to say. When Tony Stark heard that Harvey Ambulaka wanted to give him a reminder, he kept an eye on it and made the relationship clear in advance. I am not begging you, but you insist on saying it. Of course, this is just a thank you gift. Aren't you investigating who deliberately kidnapped you? Trust your instincts and be careful with each other. After all, even if it is garbage, it may cause some trouble. Harvey saw Tony Stark's frantic renunciation of the relationship, and was afraid that he would think that the other party wanted something from him, so he spoke. How did you know that I was kidnapped? When Tony Stark heard that he believed in his intuition, a name came to mind, but he quickly realized it. He was about to ask loudly, but immediately lowered his voice. I'm a little hungry. It's time for me to eat something. When Harvey heard this, he glanced at Tony Stark and did not answer. Instead, he touched his stomach and walked to the ball while talking to himself. Tony Stark saw Harvey Ambulaka crossing the dance floor and walking straight to the table with a lot of delicious food, and he had a lot of questions in his heart. But Harvey Ambulaka's position was obviously not suitable for him to continue talking to Harvey Ambulaka. So he was forced to temporarily suppress his inner doubts and walked onto the dance floor. Harvey came to the food area and looked at the dazzling array of delicious food. He took a tray and started choosing by himself. He invested so much money in Stark Industries, and of course he didn't want to see Tony Stark suddenly capsize. So he came here to take a look, give Tony Stark a reminder, and stop by to fill his stomach. Although there are other gourmet restaurants open, those places are obviously not as good as the food that holds a huge charity ball. What's more important is that he doesn't have to wait for these, he just needs to eat them with ease. Tony Stark walked to the bar feeling a little depressed and ordered a glass of wine. Hello Mr. Tony Stark, I am Agent Coulson. I met you last time. When Coulson saw Tony Stark walking towards the bar, he immediately walked over and introduced him. That's it, right, Homeland and stuff. Tony Stark looked over after hearing this and remembered something. Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. You remember it best. Coulson heard a smile on his face and corrected it. You really should change your name. Tony Stark had a headache when he heard this series of words. Many people have mentioned this issue, and we are considering modifications. But let's not talk about it for now. This time I'm looking for Mr. Tony Stark because I have something I want to know. Although I know you have been having a hard time recently, we also have to understand some things. After hearing this, Coulson agreed without hesitation, and then started chatting with Tony Stark. I'll think about it. I'll go find my secretary now. Tony Stark responded casually and found an excuse to leave. He went directly to his secretary Paybo, but his eyes were directed towards the food area. When he noticed that Harvey Ambulaka seemed to be really hungry and was feasting over there, he was a little speechless. For him, if he holds a charity ball, it is just a matter of doing good deeds to gain a good reputation for himself and being polite to some people he knows well. But this is only for him. His status among the upper class in New York is not matched by many people. But for Harvey Ambulaka, a new wealthy man in New York, attending his charity ball is a good opportunity to meet other wealthy people and meet each other. If we can negotiate some big cooperation, we can bring in a lot of money. Although you may be looked down upon by others if you take the initiative to strike up a conversation, these are inevitable things before you truly become a big shot in the eyes of others and integrate into this upper-class circle. As a result, Harvey Ambulaka came here. Apart from going up to chat with him for a few words, Harvey Ambulaka really started eating by himself. It seemed that he had no intention of making friends with anyone else. Tony Stark thought for a while and found that he still couldn't understand the logic of Harvey Ambulaka's behavior. When Peebo saw his boss Tony chatting with him, his eyes were not focused on him but looking elsewhere. She thought Tony Stark was attracted to other young and beautiful girls, but as she looked around, she realized that was not the case at all. You care about Mr. Harvey Ambulaka? Pepper asked softly while dancing with Tony Stark. Nothing, I'm just thinking about something. Tony Stark heard this inquiry and immediately denied it. Agent Coulson seemed to be concerned about Harvey Ambulaka before, but he didn't reveal too many details to me. How could Peebo not know Tony Stark's duplicity, he said with a smile. After Peebo's reminder, Tony Stark's brain spun crazily. Coulson came to him just now because he wanted to ask him about what happened in Afghanistan. So when they met last time, Coulson said that he would come to visit him again next time, which should be the intention. But instead of asking him about what happened in Afghanistan, Coulson gave priority to going to Harvey Ambulaka to find out something last time. Although he still doesn't know what Coulson is looking for Harvey Ambulaka for, but Harvey Ambulaka seems to have a higher priority than him. Thinking that he was actually outranked by Harvey Ambaraka in terms of priority, Tony Stark felt a little bit subtle. If it were before, he would definitely feel very unhappy, but after talking to Harvey Ambaraka just now, Tony Stark knew that Harvey Ambaraka was so mysterious that he couldn't even see through Harvey Ambaraka. So instead of feeling unhappy, he was actually curious about what exactly Coulson wanted to find Harvey Ambaraka for. Tony Stark looked back and found that Coulson was gone. His mind recalled the contact information that Coulson had given to him and placed on the table. But no matter how he recalled it, because he didn't pay much attention at the time, he couldn't find any memory related to Coulson's contact information in his mind. "Would you like to go to the balcony and get some fresh air?" Peebo noticed that Tony Stark seemed to have something on his mind, and she also felt the eyes around her looking at her, so she took the initiative to propose. Good. Tony Stark came to his senses after hearing this and nodded. Harvey found that Tony Stark still went to the balcony with pepper pots and didn't care. Harvey moved elegantly and put all the delicacies on the long row of tables in front of him into his mouth. Everyone around him looked at Harvey unconsciously. Some of the young women around saw that the food was decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye under the graceful movements of Harvey Ambaraka, who was polite and pleasing to the eye. They all looked at Harvey Ambaraka's belly with curiosity, trying to figure out where the food had gone. Even though Harvey Ambaraka had eaten so much, Harvey Ambaraka's stomach didn't feel full at all, as if the food had gone into a black hole that would never bottom out. But it was also because Harvey Ambaraka was too focused on eating, so even if they wanted to talk, they didn't have the right time and could only watch more and more empty plates. This presented a wonderful phenomenon. Others were chatting and dancing, but Harvey Ambaraka was eating alone. The other men noticed that their female companions and the women around them couldn't help but turn their attention to Harvey Ambaraka. Their appearance was based on their demeanor and occasion. Although they didn't show it on the surface, they were a little disdainful in their hearts. Harvey Ambaraka, a newly minted figure, even if he didn't take the initiative to greet them for cooperation, he was still here pretending to be a big eater and trying to impress everyone. Harvey didn't pay any attention to the eyes around him. This charity party was filled with 10 tables of various delicacies, all of which have a lot of evolutionary points. Harvey ate at 4 of the tables and directly obtained 530,000 evolution points, but stopped eating. If Harvey wanted to eat, there wouldn't be enough for him, but he shouldn't be too strict. There were hundreds of people present, so he had to leave some food for others. The evolution points obtained during this trip were directly equivalent to Harvey's 3 to 4 days' worth, so it was considered a worthwhile trip. The women around were originally curious to see Harvey Ambaraka eating at one table, but later Harvey Ambaraka ate at 7 tables in a row. Almost all the food for hundreds of people went into Harvey Ambaraka's stomach. They were not curious, but felt incredible. Harvey wiped his mouth gracefully with a handkerchief, poured the last bottle of wine on the table, drank it to moisten his throat, and left. The food for these 8 tables plus the fine wine on display cost at least $2 million, but in the end, Harvey Ambaraka ate and drank it all. As for Harvey Ambaraka, it didn't matter if he drank all the fine wine. If he made a fool of himself while drunk, it would be considered a joke to them, leaving him with something to talk about after dinner. But Harvey Ambaraka didn't look like he was drunk at all, and he didn't even blush. This astonishing amount of food and drink made the man who originally despised Harvey Ambaraka's eyelids twitch a few times. Harvey Ambaraka, who has been doing this for a long time, is not here to make friends at all, but to eat up his family's wealth. With this amount of food, whoever holds a party or some celebration in the future, even if he wants to invite Harvey Ambaraka, must consider whether he has allocated so much budget for food. If you don't have such a big budget, you really can't just hire this big eater with a pair of good teeth. When the women looked at Harvey Ambaraka's body that did not shake at all, they originally expected that when Harvey Ambaraka was drunk, they might go up and strike up a conversation. So some young women watched the whole process, but from beginning to end, Harvey Ambaraka didn't look drunk at all after eating and drinking, and all of them were disappointed. Harvey Ambaraka's identity is not as good as some of the big names present, but Harvey Ambaraka is young, handsome, tall and rich. Even if you put aside the rich side, with Harvey Ambaraka wrapped under the suit, you can still see the tall and muscular figure. It was enough for some of the young rich women present to have some ideas, to support them occasionally, and to have a taste of Asian flavor. It's a pity that they can't afford to take care of other young handsome guys, but Harvey Ambalaka is completely beyond their ability to take care of. The unconcealed disappointed looks of some women at the ball made other men feel a little unhappy. Harvey Ambalaka stole the show by grabbing most of the attention just by being there. Let them start thinking about how they can give Harvey Ambalaka a taste of the pain. As long as you are human, you will definitely have weaknesses, so what are Harvey Ambalaka's weaknesses? For example, family or friends, as well as some companies under your name. It is not difficult to attack Harvey Ambalaka through weakness and using some power and wealth at hand. A group of big shots began to think about Harvey Ambalaka's information. But after thinking about it in their minds, they could not find Harvey Ambalaka's weakness. Although Harvey Ambalaka is an emerging New York rich man, he is also outside the New York rich and completely alone. If you want to attack Harvey Ambalaka, there is only one place to start, and that is stocks. But Harvey Ambalaka's current holdings are mostly in Stark Industries. If they want to fight Harvey Ambalaka, they have to fight Stark Industries. What a joke, aren't they attending the Stark Industries charity ball now? As for the property prices affecting Harvey Ambalaka's name, they will not fall so easily. Even if they wanted to, the officials would not allow them to spread rumors wantonly, causing housing prices to drop significantly. When Harvey walked out after eating, he saw Stark standing on the steps in front of the venue. His expression seemed a little sad. "I told you, trust your instincts." Harvey walked past Tony Stark and spoke. "You're right, but Obadi watched me grow up. Even if I had an intuition like this, until I saw him taking the initiative to unleash his malice on me, I still couldn't make up my mind and conclude that it was him who did it." Tony Stark heard Harvey's tone that seemed to have expected everything, and was silent for a moment before speaking. But just now he went to Obadiah Stane to question him, and the response he received was that Obadiah Stane wanted to remove him from the board of directors. It can be said that Obadiah Stane has shown his ambition to seize control of Stark Industries from his hands. He didn't know when Obadiah Stane had this idea, but the best way to seize power was to get rid of him. He was conducting a technological weapon demonstration with the military in Afghanistan. Normally, it would be impossible for those in Afghanistan to know that he was there and lay an ambush in advance. Therefore, Tony Stark did not think that it was the improvised intention of the group of terrorists to attack the American military at will. It must have been a premeditated action. Therefore, he has been thinking and doubting who betrayed his itinerary. "I never thought it was actually Obadiah Stane." Although Harvey has not experienced it personally, he also knows that this feeling of betrayal by a loved one in his eyes is definitely not easy to accept. If you affirm your enemies, stop being kind. Otherwise, after something happens, it will be too late. So Harvey just gave some reminders again, without any words of comfort. When Tony Stark heard Harvey Ambalaka's reminder, he seemed to see through the struggle in his heart at this time, and his eyes flickered. Although he had many questions, he didn't ask any questions this time. Although Harvey Ambalaka is very mysterious and seems to know everything. But what is certain is that they are not enemies. At least for now, Harvey Ambalaka has not shown any intention to harm him. Tony Stark himself wanted to find the clues about Obadiah Stane and was taking action. However, Harvey Ambalaka's reminder just now made Tony Stark make a decision. Tony Stark also left the venue and went directly back to Stark Manor. Harvey also returned home. After the huge amount of evolution points brought by the meal just now, Harvey directly ushered in the 265th evolution again. Purple light covered Harvey's body, and after a short time, Harvey's void skin also successfully evolved 46 times. Harvey decided to evolve void skin 100 times before evolving in other directions. After all, many heroes in the Marvel world are not physically resistant to beatings, but their attacks are very strong. If he wants to live safely, physical strength is the most important thing. As long as he is not killed in one blow, he can come back at any time. Harvey himself does not intend to overly influence Tony Stark, but this time he will remind Tony Stark because he has already figured it out. Except for the keynote where Tony Stark escaped death and completed his psychological transformation into Iron Man. Some other small things should be appropriately affected. Obadiah Stane will eventually be eliminated by Tony Stark. Since then, without the influence of others, Tony Stark has completely controlled the future direction of Stark Industries. If he had no influence at all except for key nodes, and just because of his few reminders, this universe would no longer be the main universe. Then if he lures Tony Stark to believe in the void in the future, it will also make this place no longer the main universe. This is why Harvey figured it out and went to the party. And even if the universe he is currently in is not the main universe, it will only affect some of his future plans and will not affect his safety. At present, except that he cannot spread the word about the void and provoke Ancient One and Odin, he can only act according to his heart. Harvey felt the power inside his body and began to adapt in the basement. The void skin not only simply improved his physical defense capabilities, but also enhanced his strength. Although the magnitude of the improvement is not as large as those of directly evolved active skills, it is still a weak and continuous improvement in his power. This is why Harvey is currently keen on enhancing void skin. Of course, the mental resistance also needs to be improved, but there is no need to worry too much yet. After all, magical opponents will have to wait at least until a mage of the level of Scarlet Witch Wanda appears before he will face an enemy with magic. And there is no need to be too afraid. Even if the opponent's magic is very strong, you are not qualified to fight him head-on. Because before the other party takes action, he can rush out in the darkness and quietly injure or even kill the other party. Harvey used more than $3 billion at one time this time. After excluding some inherent assets, he only had $100 million in liquidity. So Harvey casually opened the dark web, hoping to make some extra money by doing a few orders. But Harvey took a look and found that there were only some small orders of $1 million to $2 million left. Moreover, it is an escort order, which requires a week or half a month to be completed. These tasks are often done by a group of several mercenaries who like to complete the list. Because guarding means you have time to set up a defensive line and then kill the enemy. Therefore, $1 million a week is no longer a small amount. But for Harvey, if he had time to make these small orders, he might as well save time, eat more, and try to evolve himself a few times sooner. Finding that there were no plunder and annihilation orders worth more than $5 million, Harvey closed the black network, walked into the basement, and started his daily exercise. Just Harvey Umbaraka eating a lot of food at a charity ball hosted by Stark Industries. Although it did not spread across New York, it spread secretly among New York's upper classes. Many upper-class people in New York felt disdainful and envious at the same time. Because they have enjoyed a wealthy life for many years, their appetites have become more and more sophisticated. They only taste a few bites of many foods, but after a few more bites, they will lose their appetite. Most of those who despised Harvey Ambalaka were upper-class men. Some women from the upper class took a keen interest in Harvey Ambalaka, who had a huge appetite. Harvey Ambalaka didn't attend any parties in the past, so even if they were interested in finding Harvey Ambalaka, there was no excuse. But things were different now. Harvey Ambalaka began to appear in some evening parties held by the upper class. Although Harvey Ambalaka has participated in a charity gala hosted by Stark Industries, this is already a signal. They can also try to invite them in the future, just in case they come over. The next day, a piece of news suddenly appeared on the news. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Stark Industries was attacked by terrorists, and all the offices of Stark executives were destroyed. Fortunately, there were no casualties. The terrorists are currently unknown. As soon as the news came out, many people in New York who didn't know the truth happily started eating. Some people believe that this was a stupid decision announced by Tony Stark, the chairman of Stark Industries, and provoked revenge. Some people thought that someone wanted to take the opportunity to bring down Stark Industries, so they launched the attack at this time. Some people also ridiculed Stark Industries' protective system for being useless. Even if it was attacked, no trace of the attacker could be found. It can be said that early in the morning, countless people in New York had something to laugh about for breakfast. If it were before, many people would definitely feel sad because of the attack on Stark Industries. Because many people hold shares in Stark Industries, they will feel distressed for a long time if some of Stark Industries' reputation is damaged or its valuation drops. But now they have all sold their stocks, and the worse Stark Industries is, the happier they are. Harvey had already woken up at 8 o'clock in the morning and was eating his first meal of the day. His dining habits are 1 in the morning, 1 at noon, 1 in the afternoon, 1 in the evening and 1 at night. When Harvey saw the news, he knew that Tony Stark had already started taking action. However, Tony Stark obviously has many ways to get what he wants with minimal loss, but it is inappropriate to choose such a method. It's just that Harvey thought about it carefully and realized that Tony Stark had just made the steel armor, so he had not yet fully adapted to the power and used his abilities reasonably, so he understood. Although Iron Man's armor is just the beginning, the destructive power it causes is still extremely amazing, almost equivalent to the personification of a state-of-the-art fighter jet. And after continuous improvement, Iron Man's power is simply not something that human technology can compete with. However, this powerful force did not turn Tony Stark into a villain. This is all due to the incident in Afghanistan. Harvey thought for a while and finished his breakfast, then put on a death cloak that covered his whole body so that he could not see his face, and then decided to go to Afghanistan to have a look. Although Tony Stark has obtained the evidence of Obadiah Stane, at the moment Tony Stark should still go to save the people in Gumila, Afghanistan. After all, it was a trouble caused by Stark Industries, and Tony Stark, the person in charge, needed to deal with it. If he wants to win over Tony Stark, he still needs to make some more preparations. So Harvey activated the Void attack, and his body escaped directly into the Void and left home. Harvey's current speed has reached Mach 4. Harvey himself doesn't know how fast he will be when he transforms back into the shadow of the Void Predator Kazikh. But at present, he does not need to use such fast speed to quickly go to Afghanistan, which he has visited countless times in the past few years. Afghanistan is currently in a period of war where the jungle prevails, and terrorists are rampant. They really walk around with guns and cannons there. Many mercenaries die in Afghanistan every year, but it is undeniable that Afghanistan is still a paradise for mercenaries. Some mercenaries have obtained a large amount of arms, and it is not uncommon for them to directly transform into terrorists on the spot. In contrast, New York, known as Hell's Kitchen, is suppressed by the military, at least on the surface it is not that excessive. Harvey was flying at full speed at high altitude, and the journey to Afghanistan was only about 2 hours. So Harvey came to this land he was familiar with. The smoke of war filled the air, and hell on earth was everywhere. Harvey saw these looks without any change. Harvey admired superheroes in his previous life. They had all kinds of superpowers and were good at saving thousands of lives. But Harvey admires him because he doesn't want to be a superhero. Because in the beginning, those who are saved will think that being saved because of you is a great kindness, and they will be grateful to you. But after saving many times, a strong man becomes a superhero in the eyes of others. Countless people will think that protecting and rescuing them is some kind of obligation, and then stand on the moral high ground and think that this is what you should do. It seems that superheroes are not obligated to save all sentient beings. The saying that with great power comes greater responsibility is just a rhetoric used by the weak to kidnap the strong with words and morality. Don't you see that most of the powerful people in the universe rely on their own moods to do things? Why were they not kidnapped by morality? Because they destroyed all those who kidnapped them morally. As a strong man, Harvey doesn't want to be kidnapped by the weak with morality. He just wants to live freely and by his own will. He can rescue or even help the weak, but he does it not because of some obligation, but because he wants to do it, even if it is just a whim. That was what he wanted to do, not because of instructions or moral kidnapping. When Harvey came all the way to Gumila, a figure wearing a handsome gold and red armor was fighting with the terrorists. It's just that there are some obvious pauses between Iron Man's moves. It can be seen that Tony Stark currently lacks combat experience, and the use of various weapons in his hands does not seem to be smooth enough. However, even though the combat experience was slightly lacking, the gap between technological and combat power still allowed Iron Man to kill the terrorists of the Ten Rings gang without any danger and save a group of people in Gumila. Just when Tony Stark settled the battle, a cold breath seemed to make the surrounding temperature drop a few degrees. "Sir, a life target has been detected 100 meters above the southeast direction." After hearing this, Tony Stark looked up in that direction and saw a figure covered by a dark cloak. "Jarvis, can you detect his identity?" Tony Stark saw this figure hanging in the air without relying on anything, and the feeling it exuded was extremely dangerous. His eyes shrank and he asked quickly. Detecting. Failed. Unidentified. Jarvis also checked after hearing this, and found that there was no information related to this figure in his database. As a human being, you must have a pretty good head to be able to make something like this. At this time, Harvey spoke, and a cold voice sounded in the sky. The sound was like a cold wind, making people feel their scalp numb when they heard it. Many people in Gumila, and even the crying children, were so frightened that they stopped crying. Is this a compliment to me? Thank you very much. I am very confident in my head. Tony Stark's body also rose into the air and reached 100 meters in the air. He didn't know whether this person was an enemy or a friend, but since the other person spoke, he responded naturally. You can understand that as a compliment. But the technology you made is only more powerful than humans. Looking at the universe, your technology is far from enough. You are too weak now. I hope that next time I see you, you can invent something that makes me feel more novel. Harvey looked at Iron Man and said. As soon as the words fell, Harvey's figure disappeared into thin air. Tony Stark saw this figure disappear instantly, his eyes shrank and he said directly, Jarvis. Sir, no signs of life were detected from the unknown creature. It seems as if it has completely disappeared. Jarvis also understood what Tony Stark meant, and immediately deployed the radar to start detection, but the result was that the other party was not found, and he reported a little apologetically. Tony Stark's heart sank when he heard Jarvis saying that the other party could not be detected. Although the voice of this unidentified figure made people feel creepy, it could make Tony Stark sound approving. It's just that Tony Stark was praised for his brain, but he was not happy at all. Because he had never heard of such existence on Blue Star. There are actually intelligent creatures in this world that can fly out of thin air without using any force. This made Tony Stark feel as if he had accidentally opened the door to an unknown world. Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, Tony Stark doesn't know yet. However, Tony Stark remembered that the other party commented that his technology was too weak compared to the universe. Does it mean that the other party knows the universe very well, or is the other party an alien? Come to think of it, Jarvis, the artificial intelligence he was so proud of, couldn't find any trace of the other party. Only when the other party appeared did Jarvis suddenly notify himself that the existence had appeared. He didn't even know whether the other party had just arrived or was there to see him rescue Gumila. It seemed that an accidental collision had opened the door to a new world. Facing such an unknown creature not only made Tony Stark feel excited, but also felt a sense of anxiety. What is the origin of the other party? Is it a creature belonging to Blue Star? If not, what is the purpose of coming to Blue Star? After thinking about it, Tony Stark was shocked to realize how little he knew. Immediately, Tony Stark returned with a heavy heart. He still has some things to do on his hands now. He wants to completely deal with the trouble of Obadiah Stane. After he has finished handling these matters, he will investigate the existence of the unknown creature in detail. Harvey watched Tony Stark floating in the air blankly, seemingly lost in thought before leaving Gumila. Harvey knew his identity and had already left an impression on Tony Stark. Next, as long as Tony Stark is interested in understanding, he will further deepen his impression and learn about the unknown place of the void. The purpose of coming this time has been achieved, so Harvey also returned. The most important thing to win over Tony Stark is to leave an impression. As long as the impression is left, according to Tony Stark's character of constantly thinking and pursuing the truth, they will definitely meet again. On his way back, Tony Stark was intercepted by 2 fighter planes. After some evasion, Tony Stark successfully returned to Stark Manor in New York. After returning home, Tony Stark directly ordered Jarvis to sort out all the evidence of the crimes committed by Obadiah Stane. Tony Stark then volunteered to hold a board meeting in the evening. And Tony Stark also asked Colonel Rhodes to wait for his news before taking action. Although he made the steel suit, it was not yet time to announce it. And he didn't want to do anything wrong with the steel suit, so it wouldn't be called atonement for his past crimes. Without being able to wear the iron suit, Tony Stark is an ordinary person. Naturally, he has to worry about whether Obadiah Stane will jump over the wall and suddenly attack him. Although Tony Stark was designed by Obadiah Stane to have him removed from the board of directors, the news that Tony Stark took the initiative to convene the board of directors still has appeal. Everyone in Stark Industries who has access to the board of directors has received the news. Because Stark Industries was attacked in the morning, the board of directors of Stark Industries had to discuss decisions. Now Tony Stark's call has brought them all together. When Obadiah Stane received the news that Tony wanted to hold a board meeting, his heart skipped a beat, but he still decided to go to the appointment. Soon the time came to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There are numerous guards patrolling around the Stark Industries building. At this time, in the conference room of Stark Industries, Tony Stark looked at the old antiques sitting around a table, all of whom were tall and round and over 40 or 50 years old. Harvey Ambalaka was not among them. He knew Harvey Ambalaka and must have known some of his thoughts and actions. Otherwise, Harvey Ambalaka should come and listen to this matter, which could cause uneasiness to other shareholders on the board of directors, and discuss the policy. Obadiah Stane has basically bought out other powerful shareholders within Stark. Half of the entire board of directors belongs to him, which is also the key to his daring to come to the appointment. However, we haven't completely broken the skin yet, so we should respect those who should be respected. Tony, what do you want to say when you summon us this time? Obadiah Stane asked with a smile as he looked at Tony. Before I explain, I want you to see something. Jarvis put it out. Tony Stark saw that Obadiah Stane still looked hypocritical and did not respond. Instead, he gave an order to himself. Jarvis received the instruction and immediately released the compiled video evidence. These images are evidence that Obadiah Stane instructed the 10 rings to kill him. The time record in the upper right corner of the impact shows that the time of conversation was 1 month before Tony Stark decided to go to Afghanistan. It can be said that the schedule has been exposed long ago. There are also images of Tony Stark being attacked and seriously injured and dying a month later. Subsequently, there was a conversation between Obadiah Stane and the terrorists from the 10 Rings gang explaining that they would kill Tony Stark after draining him of all his value. The entire board looked at these images in silence. Even the other shareholders who were persuaded by Obadiah Stane to buy it out felt cold at this time. They will be convinced by Obadiah Stane simply because Tony Stark decided to shut down the weapons production department without any consultation. It harmed their interests and wealth, so they joined Obadiah Stane and pulled Tony Stark from the position of chairman. Unexpectedly, Tony Stark, who was rumored to have only traveled to Afghanistan for 2 months, actually encountered a deliberate murder there. If Tony Stark hadn't laid out the evidence, they would have been kept in the dark by Obadiah Stane. Obadiah Stane can quietly erase Tony Stark in this way, then if they are in the wrong position in the future, or are regarded as having no value, will he also be quietly removed like this? Although Tony Stark did not know what kind of favor he received and finally escaped, it does not mean that everyone can survive in the face of a terrorist attack. Obadiah Stane, you have watched me grow up, so I have always regarded you as an uncle who needs respect. Our cooperation over the years cannot be said to be close, but we still perform our own duties and make Stark Industries stronger and stronger. I have never deliberately concealed some of my inventions and plans from you. So I always thought we had a good relationship. But I never thought that one day I would be betrayed by my uncle. Tony Stark felt the silence in the conference room. He looked at Obadiah Stane, whose face became gloomy because his deeds were completely exposed, and said with some sadness in his eyes. Knowing that all of this was the work of Obadiah Stane, Tony Stark recalled that he had just successfully test-fired, and the military was tempted to buy their Stark Industries technology. Obadiah Stane immediately contacted him to ask how he was doing. He was not concerned that things were not going well, but that he had arrived at the designated military test base in Afghanistan. After confirming and hanging up the phone, Obadiah Stane immediately gave the news to the 10 Rings gang. The thought of this made Tony Stark feel sick. Then, Tony Stark finished speaking and pressed a button. With a sound of bang, the door of the conference room was opened directly. The sound of uniform footsteps was heard, and a group of FBI led by Colonel Rhodes immediately filed in. Click, 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 all the pistols were pointed at Obadiah Stane. The shareholders on the board of directors were too frightened to move. Obadiah Stane, you colluded with terrorists to betray national intelligence, resulting in the loss of some national talents. and with intent to murder Tony Stark, you're under arrest. Colonel Rhodes watched as Obadiah Stane pronounced the other man's guilt. The man suspected of murdering Obadiah Stane is still expected to be released from prison with his wealth and means. However, after being charged with colluding with terrorists and selling national intelligence, Obadiah Stane spent the rest of his life in prison. I want to make a call, these things and Obadiah Stane stood up and said that he wanted to make a phone call, but he just reached into his arms. Colonel Rhodes shot, bang, and killed Obadiah Stane on the spot. Obadiah Stane lost some of his brothers to his men and asked him to blame his superiors. Terrorists are not that easy to deal with, but now it is known that Obadiah Stane colluded and caused the loss of his brother. Therefore, Colonel Rhodes did not give Obadiah Stane any chance to explain. Carry it away. Colonel Rhodes looked at the other shareholders in the conference room who were shaking with fear and said coldly. 2 soldiers directly carried Obadiah Stane away. Okay, let's go ahead and start the meeting. Now we have to discuss the future direction of Stark Industries. Tony Stark is a man who has been to the cruel and ruthless Afghanistan, so his expression did not change at all during this battle, and he spoke. Quote. Facing Tony Stark, who obviously has a deep relationship with the military, no shareholder present dared to object to Tony Stark's opinion. The news of Obadiah Stane's death was directly covered up and did not spread in New York. However, the energy industry decision-making policy for Stark Industries' decision to change careers has been announced. This news made many people in New York not optimistic. Stark Industries is the undoubted industry leader in weapons, but Stark is not yet a leader in the energy industry. Unless Stark Industries comes up with an era of advanced energy, it is impossible for Stark Industries stock to return to its peak and continue to rise. However, this news also reassured some people who still held shares. Although it is difficult to return to the top but switch to the energy industry, according to the connections left by Stark Industries in the past, it is not a problem to gain a foothold in the energy industry. And Tony Stark did not immediately announce the news about the arc reactor because it was not time yet. His own armor needed further modifications. And he also has to find a way to make the arc reactor really used in the energy industry to prevent it from being exploited by some thoughtful people. As long as it's done well, it's not difficult for Stark Industries stock to return to its peak or even rise higher. After Obadiah Stane, the biggest trouble at present, is solved, he still has a lot to do. But there was no doubt that he was no longer in such a hurry, so after Tony Stark returned to Stark Manor, he took the initiative to contact Harvey Ambalaka. I want to share my joy with Harvey Ambalaka and chat with him to see if I can get some other information. Sir, the other party refused to listen. But within a moment, Jarvis's words were like a glass of cold water poured on Tony Stark's head. Tony Stark didn't ignore the other party when he heard it, but simply refused to listen. Who is he? He is a well-known playboy in New York and a celebrity among New York's upper class. There has never been anyone who dared to refuse to answer his calls since he was a child. What a guy, how dare you not answer my call? It actually made Tony Stark laugh. Keep in touch with me. So Tony Stark continued to call Jarvis to contact him. Anyway, he can bombard Harvey Ambalaka with information at will without him having to do anything. It was just that Jarvis had just made a second phone call, so there was no need for Jarvis to report it. The number you have dialed cannot be reached. The appearance of this mechanical female voice silenced Tony Stark. Does he have no other way to contact you? After a pause, Tony Stark asked reluctantly. If nothing else happens, Mr. Harvey Ambalaka will probably unplug the landline directly. Jarvis replied upon hearing this. Although Tony Stark was helpless, he temporarily gave up contacting Harvey Ambalaka. As for finding Harvey Ambalaka at his door, that was absolutely impossible. If he really came to look for him, doesn't that mean that he begged Harvey Ambalaka to talk to him? Jarvis also knows Tony's character, so in addition to remote communication methods such as mobile phones and landlines, he didn't suggest that Tony could drive to Harvey Ambalaka's estate and find someone directly. Contact Peebo for me. I have something to ask her. Tony Stark ordered. Pepper was upstairs watching the news when she heard about the death of Obadiah Stane. She also knew that Obadiah Stane wanted to deliberately murder Tony Stark, so she didn't have much to say about it. So Peebo quickly received the news and hurried down. Pepper, Do you know Coulson? Tony Stark asked immediately when he saw Pebo coming down. I know, but weren't you not interested in knowing before? When Pebo heard this name, he was stunned for a moment and then asked. I wasn't interested before, but now I am. What is the scope of responsibility of the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency? Did he tell you? Tony Stark walked to a chair and lay down, and asked casually. When I think about it, it seems like a special force set up by the International Security Council to deal with various bizarre incidents. Pepper's memory and mobility are very strong, so she will become Tony's effective secretary. Is it a strange incident? Do you have his contact information? Tony Stark heard this scope of responsibility, thought for a moment, and asked. I don't know if it will be useful, but I do have his contact information. Pebo nodded and said. That's just right. Please help me contact Coulson. Tell him I want to meet him and have a chat at noon tomorrow. Tony Stark immediately instructed after hearing this. I'll give it a try. I don't know if he's free now. Although Pebo didn't understand when he heard this, he immediately took out his mobile phone and started to contact him. Hello, Miss Pepper Potts. I wonder what you want from me. Just to the surprise of Tony Stark and Pepper, Coulson picked up immediately. Mr. Tony wants to meet you at noon tomorrow and have a chat with you. Pebo also explained his thoughts. Okay, then I'll see you tomorrow at noon. Coulson was investigating the Iron Man who appeared in Afghanistan. Now that he heard that Tony Stark actually wanted to talk to them, he naturally agreed without any hesitation. Coulson actually wanted to go over and talk to Tony Stark now. But since Tony Stark specified the time, he would not break this rule and wait until the appointed time to talk. Tony Stark also went to sleep here, regarding the unidentified unknown creature. Nothing can be found through relying on him to investigate, but Coulson may be able to know something. Soon at 12 noon the next day, Coulson came to Stark Manor on time to visit. The two met in the lobby on the second floor. Hello, Mr. Tony Stark, thank you for agreeing to meet me. Coulson said politely when he saw Tony Stark. I don't know, what exactly does your bureau want to know from me? But before that, you have to answer some questions for me. As soon as my problem is solved, then I will tell you what you want to know. Tony Stark met Coulson, and there was no nonsense after that. Okay, you ask first. Coulson knew that Tony Stark was conceited and arrogant, so he didn't mind. Do you know anything about this figure? Tony Stark heard this and pressed the button with his right hand, and an image appeared. It was the figure recorded by Jarvis. I know who he is, but can you tell me where you took his image? Coulson's eyes shrank when he saw the dark shadow in this image that made him, Chief Fury, and Natasha feel helpless. It's just that this figure is floating in the air and was taken from a flat angle, so it's impossible to determine its position. Afghan Gumila. Tony Stark paused when he heard this and did not hide it. If the other party is really a force specializing in investigating strange events, then it will not be difficult to investigate his identity. It will be exposed sooner or later anyway, and there is no use in hiding it deliberately. Coulson saw Tony Stark mention Afghanistan again, and immediately thought of Iron Man appearing in Afghanistan. Unsurprisingly, that Iron Man is Tony Stark himself, since Tony Stark has no intention of hiding it. I see, then it's not surprising. This creature claims to be from the void, and our bureau doesn't know its true name. But in Blue Star, he has an alias named Death, who is active in the secret mercenary world. So Coulson also told everything he knew. In the mercenary world, no wonder Jarvis can't find any information related to him. Tony Stark pondered for a moment after hearing this word, and understood that Jarvis could not judge the other party's identity immediately. Because he had heard of mercenaries in the past, but he didn't have anyone he wanted others to help him get rid of, so he had never connected to the legendary Black Network. But now that he knew it, Tony Stark immediately ordered Jarvis to connect to the Black Network. Mr. Tony Stark, I didn't mean to hit you. Even if your artificial intelligence is connected to the dark web, you can't investigate anything. Our bureau once spent a lot of money to meet with the God of Death. The same goes for the judgment of the existence of the God of Death. The appearance is unknown, the strength is unknown, and the origin is unknown. The only thing we know is that he should be a male and is extremely dangerous. Coulson politely reminded him after hearing that Tony Stark had investigated death. Yes, sir, all I have been able to investigate is some superficial rumors. Not as much as this, Coulson knows. Jarvis's voice also sounded at this time, but he still released what he investigated. Because Jarvis knew that since Tony Stark cared, he just wanted to see it. Some records about death appeared in front of Tony Stark in the form of fonts. Coulson, you said you could pay a high price to meet him. Why did you want to meet him in the first place, and what was the price you mentioned? Tony Stark asked while looking at the deeds and rumors about death circulating on the dark web. The purpose of meeting him cannot be revealed to you yet. I can only tell you after I ask you about the information I want. But the price for meeting him is to release a designated task, and the deposit alone costs tens of millions of dollars. Including the remuneration after completion, the starting price is at least 20 million US dollars. Coulson paused after hearing this and then explained. What did you say? $20 million can be a high price. Is your department so poor from far away? Tony Stark originally thought that he had paid for something precious that money could not buy, so he succeeded in getting an appointment with the god of death. Unexpectedly, it was something that could be solved with money. In Tony Stark's view, problems that could be solved with money were not considered a big deal. Our department is not poor, it just requires planning an application to mobilize funds. When Coulson heard Tony Stark's words, there was a trace of embarrassment on his face and he wanted to explain. To put it bluntly, don't you just have to look at the senior management's face before you can mobilize some funds? 20 million US dollars, you all need to go through detailed planning and application before you can mobilize it. Doesn't it prove that your department is very poor? When Tony Stark heard this, he directly interrupted Coulson's explanation, looking like he understood. Coulson couldn't help but feel angry when he saw Tony Stark's ungrateful tone, but the quality of a professional agent still allowed him to suppress it. He didn't come here to argue with Tony Stark, but to talk in exchange for some information. Mr. Tony Stark, I have told you some information. Is it my turn to ask now? So Coulson said politely after suppressing his anger. You can ask. Tony Stark was a little surprised when he saw Coulson clenching his fists, obviously angry, but it only took him a few seconds to suppress it. But Tony Stark is also a man of his word, so let Coulson ask the question. Mr. Tony Stark, how did you get from? Coulson also started asking. Tony Stark also said everything he could say, except that he made the arc reactor. They have talked about making a steel armor and escaping, and even the subsequent transformation. Because the Mark II he transformed has already made its debut in the world. After listening to this, Coulson was completely convinced that the armored man of Iron Man was rumored to be Tony Stark. He was also sensible and didn't say anything to ask Tony Stark to hand over this technology to the country. I see, you are indeed Mr. Tony Stark. Your mind is a huge treasure. Coulson directly praised Tony Stark with admiration. Isn't it already recognized that I am a genius? Tony Stark accepted the compliment without any humility. Then can I ask, Mr. Tony Stark, what exactly do you want to do with the suit of armor you made? You saved some people in Gumira, Afghanistan, and you went to clean up some of the trouble left by Stark Industries weapons. Or do you think you have the ability, so you want to help them? However, when Coulson looked at Tony Stark's stinky response, he did not deliberately criticize or argue, but confirmed Tony Stark's will. Superheroes have to be good-hearted, and Tony Stark used to be a free-spirited playboy. Do such people have kind hearts, have great love and are willing to contribute to Blue Star? Coulson could only put a question mark on this before he knew more about it. A little bit of both. Tony Stark heard Coulson's words, thought of Ethan, paused and said. Ethan sacrificed his life to save him, and Gumila is Ethan's hometown. He cannot bring Ethan back to life, but at least he must protect Gumila's peace. Will you help other people in danger in the future? Coulson heard both, his eyes lit up and he asked again. I'm not sure, Gumila is the hometown of a friend of mine, so that's why I want to protect it. As for the others, I can't get the answer until I meet them. Tony Stark heard this and spread his hands. Mr. Tony Stark, in fact, because of the existence of aliens. So Blue Star's current situation is not optimistic. When Coulson heard these uncertain words, he hesitated and decided to tell more information. I already know this. Doesn't the death god you mentioned come from some void? And when he talked to me a few words, he also talked about the universe. My technology is only powerful and advanced compared to humans, but it is still too weak compared to the universe. Tony Stark waved his hand when he heard this, and said with some dissatisfaction in his eyes. Since he took over Stark Industries, he has invented advanced technologies for mankind time and time again. He had always been proud of it, but the god of death actually said that his technology was still too rubbish. How could he be convinced? Mr. Tony Stark, don't you want to know why our agency met with Mr. Death? Before I explain this, there is one thing I want to explain to you. Aliens have visited Blue Star decades ago. That time a superhero with superpowers appeared on Blue Star and helped us humans successfully resist the alien attack. The time when aliens have existed is unknown, but it is certain that their technology is more advanced and developed. Mastering technologies such as space jumps, space battleships, etc., these are currently beyond the reach of our Blue Star humans. It was also from that time that my commander, Nick Fury, wanted to create the Avengers to guard against threats posed by the arrival of aliens in the future. Coulson heard Tony Stark's dissatisfaction, so he also wanted to win over and began to explain. You didn't find someone with superpowers but found me. It seems like your progress is not going well. After listening to this long speech, Tony Stark immediately captured the meaning of Coulson's words. Yes, people with superpowers did appear in Blue Star in the past, which proves that there are other people with superpowers among humans. But humans are a race that is xenophobic and is also afraid that others will regard them as aliens. People with superpowers are almost always hidden, making it difficult for people to discover and find them. You have also seen some of the rumors and records circulated by the god of death on the dark web. Some of the tasks he accomplished were beyond the scope of human capabilities. After investigation and discussion, we all agree that Mr. Death is most likely a strong man with superpowers. Even if he is not a superpower, his strength is far beyond that of ordinary people. So we made an appointment with him a few months ago. Until he showed up, we didn't know how long he had been there, let alone how he got here. In a sense, we have found the right one. Mr. Death is indeed a strong man whose strength cannot be judged. But it's a pity that he is not a Blue Star person, but an alien. When Coulson talked about this, his face was full of emotion and disappointment. He has followed Chief Fury for nearly 20 years, and Chief Fury became the director. His agent level has also been continuously improved during these 20 years, and he is currently an agent with higher status and authority in the Bureau. After decades of investigating various strange events while performing tasks, he was finally able to find a person with superpowers. Coulson was naturally overjoyed, but what happened next could only be described as disappointing as he was happy. And they also learned that the legendary god King Odin may not have much life left. Blue Star may no longer have shelter, if it doesn't find some powerful heroes to form the Avengers Alliance and have some countermeasures. By then, what humans will face will most likely be massacred by aliens or even enslaved. But Chief Fury said not to spread the news that Odin might die soon. Because if what Mr. Death said is true, God King Odin and the Asa Protoss have been protecting Blue Star. When the people of the Asa Protoss actually came to Blue Star, they were saying that God King Odin's lifespan was short. So even if the Asa Protoss originally wanted to protect humans, they would still have a grudge against them. Tony Stark saw that what Coulson said was true, because the emotion and disappointment on Coulson's face could not be faked. Then you came to me because you thought I had a sudden burst of superpowers and that was why I was able to escape from Afghanistan. It's just that Tony Stark changed his position and understood the meaning of Coulson's words immediately. Yes, but I never thought that Mr. Tony Stark, you would rely on your clever mind to create a steel armor that is comparable to the latest fighter jets. Although you are not a superpower, in my eyes you are equivalent to a superpower. Coulson didn't hide anything after hearing this, and directly expressed his feelings and admiration. According to your Bureau's policy of action, you are specifically investigating people who may have superpowers. So you had previous contact with Harvey Ambalaka, that is to say. Tony Stark accepted the admiration and praise without any embarrassment. He immediately thought of something and asked. Yes, we previously speculated that Mr. Harvey Ambalaka might be a person with superpowers. Because he seems to be enveloped by Lady Luck, even though his superpower may not be combat-related, it may still come in handy. Coulson nodded when he heard this, almost answering all questions, because these were not top-secret information. Then what's the result? When Tony Stark heard about Coulson and the people from the Homeland and Bureau, just like before, he just thought that Harvey Ambaraka was just lucky, and his eyes flashed. Based on the results of the 2 contacts, we determined that Harvey Ambaraka did not have superpowers. Coulson shook his head slightly when he heard this and said with some regret. No. This answer reminded Tony Stark of some of the conversations Harvey Ambaraka had with him on the balcony outside the ball. The calmness and indifference that Harvey Ambaraka inadvertently revealed when he talked about Obadiah Stane. It was as if Obadiah Stane was really as insignificant as trash in the eyes of Harvey Ambaraka. It looks like Harvey Ambaraka has something to rely on. But regardless of whether Harvey Ambaraka has superpowers or not, it turns out that Tony Stark Harvey Ambaraka obviously has no idea of joining the Avengers. I understand what you mean. Blue Star is in a moment of crisis. Your bureau wants to create the Avengers Alliance to jointly resist alien invasions that may occur at any time in the future. But now Stark Industries is in a moment of transformation, and I have a lot of things on my hands. So I have to think about joining the Avengers again. But if there are any major disasters or potential threats in Blue Star, you can contact me and maybe I will help you. Tony Stark thought of this, looked at Coulson and said. The appearance of the God of Death forced Tony Stark to believe that there were aliens in the universe, and that those aliens had quietly arrived at Blue Star. Therefore, he needs to find a way to get Stark Industries' successful transformation on the right track as soon as possible, so that he can devote himself wholeheartedly to the research of steel armor. It's a pity that he doesn't know what kind of abilities and strength the God of Death has, so he can't make a targeted armor. But since the God of Death is on Blue Star, he will definitely find out one day. I just hope that day will not be too late. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tony Stark. Coulson heard Tony Stark's response and stood up with a look on his face. After thanking him, Coulson also took the initiative to say goodbye and left. Coulson was in a very good mood, and although Tony Stark didn't join directly, he also got a promise. When there is a big disaster in the future, there will be an opportunity to join forces, which proves that his contacts during this trip were good in terms of results. With a good start, it won't be too long before they pull Tony Stark to officially join the Avengers. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.